Then what?
Walked into the house, proceeded forward, saw a patient on the floor to the right, proceeded to the patient to start an assessment and evaluation.
And then Captain Keller had already come in.
I'm pretty confident, yes, he would have been quicker getting off the truck and inside.
And so you did your assessment, and then what?
My assessment revealed that he was unresponsive, no pulse, no breathing, so I would have started CPR, started chest compressions.
Did you do that with his shirt on?
I would have lifted that out of the way so I could find the proper landmarks.
So you had said that you saw that there was, let's see, 2 gunshot wounds, is that correct?
Yes.
And then you saw that through the shirt? Or how did you assess that when you first entered? That's my question.
Once I'm doing CPR, I can see 2 bullet holes in the shirt. I can see that on the chest and on the abdomen. I can see the wounds as I'm looking at the chest and doing chest compressions.
Okay. And then he had on what color shirt?
I wouldn't have recalled other than, I guess, the video yesterday. I think it was a dark colored shirt I think we saw on the screen.
And so you had talked yesterday about the blood being more blood on chest, not pooled around your knees, right? Is that correct?
Correct.
And so with the dark shirt, was it hard to see the blood? I'm kind of trying to see what you saw when you entered.
I remember seeing blood on the chest. I remember not seeing blood on the abdomen.
And there were holes in the shirt, 2 holes in the front side?
I would, that's my call, yes.
Okay. And when did you cut off the shirt, and how does that procedure work?
I continued doing CPR, chest compressions. One of my other colleagues would have cut that off, and knowing that the shirt maybe is potentially evidence, that's why I said to her, don't cut through where the holes are. So she could have cut down the side instead of on the top of the body.
And do you use like a special scissors or something for that?
Yeah, we have some trauma shears in our equipment.
Okay. And who was that? Was that Phelps? Or?
I believe that was firefighter Kaczynski.
Okay. Kaczynski, that's one I didn't have. So who all was sitting there with you that was on scene at that time?
Firefighter Fife would have been there.
Mm-hmm.
Firefighter Kaczynski, the 3 of us, kind of like we saw in the video or like the picture yesterday, all 3 of us around the patient, while Captain Keller was standing back a little bit, like you saw in the picture.
Okay. You said that you had been a CPR instructor for 12 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And was that for the last 12 years or 12 years ago?
Approximate dates, 2004 to 2016, let's say.
Okay. And so have you taught people who have never done CPR before?
Have I taught those? Yes.
Right. And not just like people renewing their certification, but both?
Correct.
Okay. How many people would you say that you've taught that have never done CPR before?
Never done CPR, and it's probably in the hundreds over that long of doing that.
So you'd be familiar with how a first timer would react?
Yeah, you try to forewarn them what to expect.
Okay. So these first timers, they have to be taught the appropriate place to place their hands. Would that be fair?
That is part of the course, yes.
And so do you show them, or do you just tell them in class where to put their hands?
It's a video-based system through American Heart. There's a curriculum that we would have been following.
Okay. So if you could only tell them, like over the phone, that might be difficult for them to know the correct placement of their hands if they've never done it before.
I guess it depends on the instructions that the dispatcher gave. Ultimately, if I was telling somebody over the phone, you want to put your hands on their chest, on the lower part of the chest. It's that kind of simple, so to speak.
Okay. But without the video, if you were teaching a class and you didn't have the video, it might be difficult, right? For a bunch of first timers?
Objection, speculation.
Overruled. You can answer.
Didn't you answer? Okay. Sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so it might be difficult. If you didn't have the video, it might be difficult, for a bunch of first timers to know exactly what to do if you just had to tell them middle of the chest, lower chest.
You could obviously show on a person, you could show on yourself.
If you couldn't show them and you could only tell them, could it be difficult?
I suppose it's possible depending on the person.
Okay, that's fair. So do you think that your CPR class would be fairly successful if you had no visuals?
Objection, relevance, speculation.
Next question.
I got it, Your Honor. So if a person had never done it before and was just told how to do it, is it possible that they might not be acquainted with where to put their hands?
It's possible.
And it would also be possible that they might not do it properly.
That could be possible too.
And right now when you're teaching CPR, and I didn't say you are teaching right now, but if you're teaching a class, are they just doing percussions now? There's no breathing in the mouth, is that correct?
It's going to depend on the level of the class. As far as the lay rescuer, people that have never done it before, that's just when I have the training. It's evolved and we're teaching compression only. That is a form of CPR now also, just doing chest compressions.
And how long do you teach to do that for? How long of a period before you take a rest? Or
Well, it varies depending on if the patient is an adult or a child. There are different guidelines that American Heart offers. So in those courses, they're getting to learn information for adults and children and infants also.
Correct, right. So for an adult, how long, like 30, 100, 150? It's been a while, so just wondering.
With an adult, they're also taught they need to call for help right away also. So that's a factor. Are they alone? Is somebody else able to call? Can they call, put the phone on speaker, start, while talking to 911? And then they would just keep going until help arrives.
So there's no timing, like you take a 10-second break, you just do compressions?
Not for that type of level of CPR, there wasn't.
Okay. So it's helpful if you had someone there that you could like take turns, like I'll do 100 and then you do 100, because it's kind of exhausting, right?
Objection, compound question, relevance.
I'll sustain it as the compound question. You can re-ask the question. Ask it in a different way. Go ahead.
So how long did you administer the CPR before you did the flip over? How long do you think that was?
Before we rolled him to look at the back, is that what you mean?
Correct. Yes, that's correct.
I would estimate maybe up to a minute.
Okay. And then were you counting compressions? Is that what you were doing during that time, or do you not count? You just do it for a certain amount of time?
I don't recall if I was counting. I mean, I was doing the chest compressions while waiting for the rest of the team to arrive and for us to continue assessing, see if we're going to continue to work the patient and utilize more equipment.
And there were 3 of you there?
4 total, but 3 by the patient.
Okay. And then you could take turns, right? Like trade off if you needed to?
If we needed to, yes.
So that'd be a lot easier than when you're just there by yourself. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know how long after the rolling over you started doing compressions again? Is that correct?
Yes.
That's what I had.
Yes, I believe so.
And how long did you do that for?
I would estimate maybe upwards of another minute
So maybe 2 minutes total?
during that sequence, yes.
And was there another sequence?
At some point, we would have stopped doing chest compressions so we could evaluate the heart rhythm. That's on the heart monitor.
With the heart
And
monitor?
we can't be doing compressions to evaluate that.
Okay. And then you didn't continue compressions after the heart monitor at all?
From what I recall, I resumed again and brief discussion as far as what direction we were going to go.
And what were the results of the heart monitor?
There was no electrical activity.
And how long was the heart monitor applied compared to when you started the first compressions?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. Maybe you can reword it or.
Sure. How far into your treatment, I should say, did you guys stop and do the heart monitor?
I would estimate that the monitor probably was on within 2 minutes of making patient contact.
Okay. And how long does that take?
To do what? To put it on?
Well, yeah, to put it on, get a reading, and decide what you're going to do next.
It could take, you got to turn it on, open up a compartment to get the pads out of that compartment. You've got to open that packaging to be able to apply it to the patient's chest area. If the chest is wet, which there's some blood, you need to dry that so it's going to adhere more properly, read more properly. So you could be looking at 30 seconds to a minute possibly of working through that.
Okay. And did you have to do that in this case, is remove blood to stick them on?
I would assume so, but I was doing chest compressions, so that would have been one of the other 2 firefighters kind of working through that.
Okay. So I understand correctly, you said when you rolled him over, did you cut the shirt in the back also to see the exit wounds? Is that?
No, we only had to cut the shirt one time. That was when he was still laying on his back. You cut it down the side and that opens it up to where then you can remove it from the body, pull it off.
So you did pull it off completely at some point?
More than likely, I would say yes. That's typically what we would do.
Okay. But you don't remember if you did that in this case?
I know that I didn't do that because I was doing chest compressions. So I would assume one of my colleagues did that completely. That's typically what we do.
Okay. And so you're back to doing the compressions for the 3rd time, and then you stopped that at some point. Was there another procedure after that?
No, at that point in time is when we would have called the patient.
And who announces that?
Ultimately, I remember our captain, since he's in charge of the crew, would be considered the lead medic. He has the most experience. He's also charting the call, kind of running it, kind of made that final decision.
And that would be Captain Keller? I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And then he did call it at, do you know what time?
It would have, I don't have it memorized. No, it would have been like in the charting that he was doing.
And who documents that?
He would have
He
documented
would have
that.
done it? In preparation for your testimony here today, did you review the 911 call at all?
No, not in preparation for today. Not the actual audio, no.
No.
No, not today, not for this.
What did you review for today?
I was able to look at the incident times were dispatched by Phoenix Fire Department. I was able to look at the paper documentation.
Does that chart consist of?
There would be scene times, date, time, address, patient information, name, address, maybe medical history, things that we, a narrative of what we discovered, what we've done, treatments that we've done. The heart rhythm from the monitor gets attached to it.
So that would all be in Captain Keller's report?
Correct.
And you did take a look at that in preparation for today?
Yes.
And did you write a report regarding this incident?
No.
You don't have to document anything?
Just one person documents the call.
So for all of the people that were there from fire?
Correct.
Okay. So that's the total report. You just give your input to him and he puts it into the report?
Correct.
And that's the same for the other two firefighters that were along with you?
That's correct.
Okay. So they don't have their own individual reports as well?
No.
Okay. And what time were you dismissed from the scene?
I mean, we probably only remained an additional 5 to 10 minutes. The chart would have that time. I don't necessarily have it by memory.
So how long were you at the scene total? Like,
If I had to estimate without looking at it, I would say approximately 20, 25 minutes.
okay. And then you were like the driver of the truck, right? Was that your responsibility? So you drove in and then did you drive out as well?
Correct.
Okay. So if you guys arrived around 8:41 or something like that, then you left around 25 minutes later? Would that be accurate?
I guess when I was giving that estimate of like the 2025, I was even including like our dispatch time from the time we're dispatched driving to the scene. So if you're wanting to know actual on scene time, it might be closer instead of the 20 to 25, it might be more of a closer to 20 solid. Like
20 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. And is that typical for a call?
it can vary depending on the calls.
Okay. So what other things did you do in that 20 minutes besides administer to the patient?
Some including in that time while we're staged around the corner, waiting for PD to arrive, then for PD to clear the scene, for us to drive to the scene. There's the time with the patient, and then there's going to be the cleanup afterwards. Removing our equipment, going outside. Maybe the equipment needs to be cleaned, restocked, ready for another call. So when we drive away, we're ready to respond to another emergency and then drive away.
Okay. So when you were done with the patient and you were going through that procedure of cleaning, were you in the house or did you exit the house?
We'll remove all of our stuff and we'll go outside, typically to the front bumper of the fire truck.
And then what do you do?
We have cleaning chemicals on the truck that we could get out to, clean our equipment up to reuse it. We've got cabinet with restock to be able to restock anything that might need to be. So we'll take care of those things to be ready to respond to another call.
Okay. And while you were out front, did you see Alex on the curb?
I did see somebody on the curb, or I don't remember if he was on the curb or standing, but I remember seeing somebody with an officer or officers. I don't recall how many people might have been together.
Okay. And did you converse with those officers at all during that time?
I don't believe so. I don't really remember conversing with any officers on scene. That would have been more Captain Keller, charting, documenting, kind of getting information from them. He would be able to answer that question.
Okay. So did you, was anybody in firefighting on your team, the four of you that were there, was anyone asked to take a look at Alex?
We were not.
Let's see. Have you spoken to the media about this case?
Can I object? Relevance?
What's the relevance?
What is the relevance, Your Honor?
Yeah.
Just to know how many times he's given testimony?
Your Honor, I'm going to, maybe we can
Hold on.
sidebar.
Yeah, I don't want to. All right, let's go in sidebar.
Okay, just a few more questions. Mr. Cowden, is it possible that if there was a wound to the chest, that doing compressions on that could cause other damage?
I suppose it's possible, but ultimately it doesn't matter. If the heart isn't beating, it's what you got to do. It's the appropriate treatment.
So would a common person who doesn't know how to do CPR maybe hesitate about pushing on a bullet wound?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
But you wouldn't.
Can you repeat the question?
You wouldn't hesitate to push on the bullet wound if the heart was stopped?
No, I wouldn't.
And you would have to assess if the heart was stopped in order to do that?
Yes, you would check a pulse like we did. We would, use our equipment like we did.
Okay. So the two wounds that you saw when you first got there, one was in the chest and one was where?
In the abdomen,
On the right side or the left side?
I would be speculating as to how the specific spot or area without actually maybe seeing documentation.
Okay. And can you tell me about I think there's a word for it, but I'm sorry, I can't remember what it was. The crunch.
When doing the chest compressions,
Correct.
I don't know if there was necessarily a certain word that I used, but you feel the sternum crack. I compare it to, like I said before, cracking your knuckles.
And how much pressure would you have to apply to get the crack?
That could vary, like depending on who you're doing CPR on.
Like on an adult male?
I mean, it could still vary depending on, the strength of the person doing CPR also. It could vary depending on the size of that adult male also. So I've never seen like any science that might say you got to deliver this much pounds of force or anything.
Right,
So,
like 400 pounds of pressure or something?
yeah,
I don't know.
right.
Okay.
You're just
There's-
going
there
to push
isn't-
hard.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Can't have you talk over one another. So he finished his answer. Go ahead and answer the next question.
So there's no determined amount of pressure, correct?
Just hard and fast. When it comes to people doing CPR, for us, we're working as a team. We have equipment that can tell us if we're pushing hard enough. For a person without that equipment, just hard and fast.
Okay, that's fair. And then they don't always get the crack, right? It's not always going to happen.
If they're doing it forcefully enough, they would.
So if they didn't do it forcefully enough, it wouldn't.
That is possible, yes.
But then when you come in, the professionals, and you apply the correct amount of force, then you would hear the crack.
Yes,
And is that possible that happened in this case?
it is possible.
Okay, no more questions.
All right, redirect.
Does 911 have to regularly instruct people on how to perform CPR?
I don't know if I can answer that since I don't, do that since I'm not 911.
Have you regularly heard while listening to a radio 911 instructing people on how to do CPR?
We have had PTI information when we're responding to a call that will tell us that they are either performing CPR or being instructed to.
So you've seen in the past that 911 is prepared to handle individuals who may not know how to perform CPR.
Yes,
And that's to help try to keep the patient's blood moving while you're en route.
correct.
You were asked a lot about trading off and other people doing compressions. At this scene with this patient, Charles Vallow, did you ever trade off and have someone else do the CPR compressions?
No,
You were the only one doing the CPR compressions.
yes,
Were you doing CPR while another paramedic or EMT was getting the heart monitor ready?
yes,
So this timeline of however long it took them is in conjunction with you still performing CPR.
yes,
We talked about Charles's shirt being cut. If photographs from the scene show his shirt still around his neck, would that indicate that it wasn't removed from him?
after the cutting.
Yeah, so if police, let me ask you this. When you guys are done and he's called deceased, do you put his clothing back on or modify him in any way?
No, we would just take our equipment that's necessary to take.
So if his shirt was still around his neck, then that's how it would have been left.
Correct.
You were asked about whether or not you should perform CPR on a person who has a gunshot wound. Is there any reason why a person with a gunshot wound would not need to have blood circulating through their body to bring oxygen versus some other type of injury?
No.
Is the whole point of CPR to make sure that blood is circulating to get oxygen to their brain
Yes.
so that they don't go brain dead?
Yes.
And you said that ultimately it wouldn't matter if you cause more injuries because if they're brain dead, who cares, right?
Correct.
In your assessment, did you feel that no one had performed CPR on Charles Vallow before you arrived?
I had felt that. I do know in my testimony to Chandler PD, I'd stated that, or it's probably in my testimony that it was not efficient or something to those lines. But I felt like no, it had not.
Okay, you felt like no, it had not been done.
Correct.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
All right, I see at least one juror question. We'll go on a sidebar. Please, if you're a juror and you have any additional questions, pass down your question to the basket. All right, sir, you can step down. All right, so you're going to come on up here. Just stand right here and be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear that testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth will help you God.
All right, you're going to come up this ramp over here and have a seat to my left. Go ahead.
Thank you. Sir, would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Kent Keller. I'm a recently retired captain with Chandler Fire Department.
When did you retire?
April of 2022,
And how long did you work with the Chandler Fire Department?
32 years.
While you were there in, let's talk about 2019, what were your duties? What was your rank?
My rank was captain. I was an engine captain, so a company officer. I was in charge of a 4-person crew. We basically respond for calls to service and the different functions of a.
Did those calls for service include medical calls?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have any training in the area of, I guess, medical treatment yourself?
Yes, I'm a paramedic. I went to paramedic school in 1991.
And can you tell us, is there or was there ongoing type of continuing training to be a paramedic?
Yes, yes, ma'am. There's continuing education throughout the year. You have to have a certain number of hours in each subject, and as well as updates as far as pharmacology or different treatment modalities. So yes, there's constant change.
And the difference between a paramedic and an EMT?
Well, an EMT is EMT-B, EMT basic. A paramedic is an EMT paramedic. So the biggest difference would be invasive treatments. So you're trained with more ability to provide care, cardiology and pharmacology.
When fire gets a call of a person who is shot, what is sort of the normal response? What does fire do when they are coming to a scene and they know a person has been shot?
Well, what they normally would do is you get the dispatch, you look on a map, you route yourself in, and then you would determine a safe place to stage while the scene is secured by PD.
Okay. And then how do you learn that the scene is secure?
In Chandler, anyway, we have interagency communication. So you're on the radio both with Phoenix Dispatch and Chandler PD, direct car-to-car or to Chandler PD Dispatch.
So you're actually then told by Chandler Police that it's secure and you can come in?
Yes, ma'am. They will give you a scene safe or code 4 and cop dog.
When you arrive on scene as the captain, what is your role when you get there?
My role is scene safety, primary scene safety. That's rule number one in everything that we do. And in other words, as I arrive on scene, I'm going to make sure with PD that there are no more threats for our crew and get direction to where we need to do treatment.
When you have this team of 4, how do you determine who does what?
Well, I mean, that's individual crew training, and some crews might have specific jobs. Ours is more of a fill and flow. As you come to, I guess I should say, one person is charting, one person is going to be the paramedic in charge of the call. So he's running the call. His job is bigger picture, and then that'll leave 3 people for hands-on treatment until a 2-person rescue would arrive. An ambulance would arrive to help if that were the case.
Does fire ever respond to a scene and then advise that a person is deceased?
Certainly.
And if fire responds, determines a person is deceased, and this is potentially a crime scene, what does fire do at that point?
Well, fire then would pick up their gear and leave without disturbing that scene as much as possible. I mean, we have gear. We spread out our gear when we get to a patient. You know, we have monitors and drug boxes and trauma treatment boxes. So as soon as it's determined that the patient is not viable, then you would pick up that gear and leave the scene. What you don't want to do is interfere with any investigation going forward.
And even when you are working on a person, are you trying to limit impacting the scene itself to the best of your ability?
Yes, our job would be to determine if treatment is necessary and then do that treatment regardless. But yes, what I should do, what the captain or whoever that paramedic should do that has the larger picture would be to try and minimize any disturbing of the scene.
But obviously, taking care of the patient is the primary focus, even if that causes the scene to be disturbed.
Yes, ma'am.
Were you working on July 11th of 2019 around 8:30 in the morning?
Yes.
And do you recall responding to a shooting at 5531 South Four Peaks in Chandler?
Yes.
When you responded or first went to the scene, did you guys stage like we've discussed?
Yes, ma'am.
And you advised that you're being provided information from 2 different sources?
Yes, our primary source is Phoenix Dispatch. But yes, you are able to monitor Chandler PD as well.
Is Phoenix Dispatch 911?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you're getting what's coming in from 911. Are they relaying information to you?
Yes.
Are things like whether or not the patient is receiving CPR something that is very relevant to you?
Yes.
In this case, did you receive any information regarding that?
Yes. We were told that CPR instruction had been given and CPR was in progress.
Does 911, in your experience in over 30 years, are they able to provide instruction for lay people who may not know how to do 911 or not know how to do CPR compressions?
Yes, they are actually certified to do that. They train and are certified to give that instruction over the phone.
So even though it's only verbal, they've been trained to have how to present that to a person over the phone.
Yes.
So you are advised that CPR instructions have been given and that that compressions are being given? Yes.
Been a little while, but yes, I believe that I was told. I do know that the instruction. I do remember specifically hearing that CPR in progress. I believe I remember. I would have to, but definitely the CPR instructions have been given.
Does knowing that a person has been receiving CPR impact the way you view a patient when you enter a scene?
Yes.
How?
Well, because it would make the patient more viable. If adequate CPR were given prior to our arrival, then you would hope that good CPR was given and that oxygenated blood was being pushed around the body, which would mean that make the patient more viable at that point.
When you go to a scene where you believe CPR is given, such as this one, was that one of the things, I guess, that was part of your decision-making as you are assessing this patient?
Yes.
Can you talk to us about when you entered this residence, what do you recall?
When I entered the residence, I recall thinking that the house seemed empty, like it was either being moved into or moved out of. So there was no furniture or anything. We had a clear path to where the patient was. And I remember thinking that there's very little in this room other than the patient.
Did you notice at any point some items around the patient?
The only thing I remember being around the patient was a baseball bat and a ball cap.
And do you recall at this point where those items were in relation to him?
Yes, I believe the baseball bat would have been on the patient's right and the ball cap above him somewhere in the room. I think the baseball bat was against the wall on his right.
Do you recall ever seeing a bullet near the victim?
Once we started assessing, I did see a bullet, a spent round on the floor.
So that's sort of a little bit into, you're in the
Yes, ma'am.
scene,
Yes.
wasn't something you initially recognized?
No, no.
While you're in there, was there any officers in the room with you or inside the house?
There was at least one officer still clearing the house, I believe, or at least going through the house. I only recall for sure one officer being interior.
Can you describe for us how the patient, how Charles was laying when you first observed him?
Yes, ma'am. He was laying supine. He was laying on his back. As we entered, his head was towards us, so geographically, I think north. So that's how he was laying supine.
Do you recall anything about his arms or hands where they were?
I don't, to his sides. I don't recall, honestly.
Did you observe any injuries to Charles, his patient?
Yes, he had evidently a gunshot wound to his center chest. Hole in the shirt and a small amount of blood.
Did you recall or notice anything about where the blood was pooling from that shot to the chest?
At that time, I did not, because we have to expose the patient, and the so he's a big guy, so he had a small amount of blood above his sternum.
I'm showing you Exhibit 3 that's previously been admitted. Does that look like,
It adjusts a little bit, but
Okay.
you can attempt.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
are you able to see that there?
Yes.
Kind of. Does this look like the patient that you were working on?
Yes.
And in this, do you see the blood pooling in Exhibit 3 there?
Yes.
Is that sort of what you were talking about?
Yes. Here in around the collarbone. So there's a divot here. That
Would you describe this patient as a fit man?
he seemed to be. Yes.
When you saw that pooling like that, did that stand out to you or seem at all impactful in your decision of whether or not CPR had been given prior to your arrival?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because had adequate CPR been given there, I would have expected more blood, possibly on there, and perhaps a pool of blood under him. I didn't see any blood under him. I mean, when we first got there.
So when you guys first arrived, let's go back to sort of describing the scene. You said that you didn't notice any blood pooling under him.
I did not.
And is that something that you guys are cognizant of since you're going to have to get down and around him?
Yes, but we're more cognizant of it because it would indicate an exit wound. And obviously, the more blood there is, the more the heart was beating or CPR was being done.
Okay. So both the lack of spreading on him is one indication that kind of made you question if CPR had been given,
Yes, ma'am.
and the lack of pooling of blood underneath him was another sort of
Yes.
flag to you that maybe CPR had not been given.
And no one was doing CPR when we got there. Would have been the primary indicator to me. And I say that because if CPR were in progress by PD, if there were an officer there doing CPR, then they would have continued to do CPR until we relieved them.
If a person is shot and deceased and you start giving them compressions, can you still push blood out of those wounds?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, at some point when fire arrives and they are assessing a patient, I'm going to put up Exhibit 4 here. Do you need to try to remove any garments that might be around those potential gunshot wounds?
Yes, you would expose the patient.
Why is that?
Well, because you don't know for sure how many gunshots there are. You check for exit wounds. Some gunshot wounds, some entry wounds are minimal. You wouldn't see them. You know, you could go through a shirt and not see them. So you expose the patient.
Okay. I have Exhibit 4 up here from body cam from a officer that's previously been admitted. Do you recognize who these people are and where this is?
Yes, ma'am.
And is this you?
It is.
So in this case, at some point, was Charles's shirt cut in any way to allow access to those gunshot wounds?
That would be the norm. Is at this point they would be cutting his shirt.
Do you recall from this scene how many gunshot wounds you observed to the front of Mr. Vallow?
I believe 2.
Okay. Now, when you guys first arrived on scene, do you check the pulse? Like, what do you do when you first get there?
Yes, you would you would check for pulses, carotid pulse, and obvious signs of light breathing, so chest rise and fall, as you are walking up to a patient.
So in this case for Charles Vallow, did you guys find a pulse?
No, ma'am.
Did you notice him breathing?
No.
Do you do any other assessments before you start compressions?
No.
So if he's not breathing and you don't see that he has a pulse, why begin CPR? Why start compressions?
Because you don't know how long he has not been breathing or not had a pulse.
Okay.
He could have just stopped those things moments before we got there, which would make him a viable candidate, or a viable patient, rather.
And does, again, the fact that you believe CPR had been performed prior to you arriving also play into your decision to see if he's viable?
Yes.
As other officers are doing compressions, what are you doing there?
So I'm charting. So I am, in this particular case, I was running the call. So I'm going down a checklist, gathering information, getting, listening to what they're telling me, and having them, I'm directing them throughout the call.
Okay. So at some point, are compressions stopped to assess the patient in other ways?
Yes, after a heart monitor is on.
Okay. And so are compressions able to be performed while someone else is getting the heart monitor ready?
Yes, compressions continue throughout until you stop compressions to check for pulses.
Okay. Do you ever want to check a patient who you see has gunshot wounds, such as Mr. Vallow here, to see if there's exit wounds?
Yes, ma'am, immediately. So they would have cut his shirt, taken his shirt off, rolled him, checked for exit wounds, and then rolled him back and continued compressions.
In this case, are you documenting your observations and others about what you observed when he was rolled?
Yes,
So when he's rolled, you're looking at his back?
back, right, from the back of the head to the back of the feet.
Okay. So he's completely rolled over so that you can see his back. Did you notice anything about Mr. Vallow's back that may have indicated he'd been there for significantly longer than you originally thought?
He did have lividity. So there was modeling, skin modeling and lividity. Once the shirt comes off, then you can see modeling on the skin, and lividity had begun to form.
Can you tell us what modeling means?
Modeling is sort of a patchy looking skin caused from hypoxia or not enough oxygen getting to the skin. I mean, you can have mottled skin for different reasons, but in this case, it would be from his heart not beating.
Okay. And then you said lividity. What does
Yes,
that
ma'am.
mean?
So lividity is the pooling of blood, and that takes longer, much longer. So the blood will begin to leave the tissues and gravity drain to the lowest part of the body.
So when the blood isn't being circulated by either CPR or the heart, the
Mhm.
blood just starts to pool there.
Yes,
And so you noticed that as well when he was rolled?
yes.
Did you notice any exit wounds?
I did notice at least one exit wound, yes.
After you looked at his back, do you recall, I guess, when in this process you checked his heart monitor, when that was done?
I do not. This all happens simultaneously. You asked what these different people are doing. They're doing all of those things simultaneously. So the patient is exposed, CPR has begun, and the evaluation, the rest of the evaluation is happening. So timeline, it's on the heart monitor, I'm sure, but so a lot of it happens simultaneously. That answer the question? You asked that again? I'm
I
sorry.
believe so. Do you recall what the heart monitor results were?
Asystole, no electrical rhythm in the heart. Flatline for,
Do you ever look at a patient's pupils?
yes, ma'am, always.
What's that for?
Because if it's just a brain function, if you shine light on pupils, they react. When the brain stops to function, hypoxia sets in, the pupils will dilate and remain fixed, so they won't change. They're non-reactive to light.
What did you see with Mr. Vallow?
They were fixed and non-reactive.
So we heard about the pooling of the blood on Mr. Vallow when you first arrived. As CPR was being done, did you notice any blood being pushed out of his body?
A little bit more. Again, he is on his back. Exit wound was in his back, but yes, we increased the amount of blood under the patient by doing CPR.
When you first arrived, did you notice any active bleeding?
No, ma'am.
What's the relevance of no active bleeding?
No heartbeat.
Were you advised of Scott Cowden's information about when he started CPR, hearing the crunch, or feeling, I guess, the crunch of him performing CPR?
Was I advised of it?
Yeah, did he let you know that?
No, but that would be expected.
And is that expected if CPR hadn't been performed?
No, not adequately. Again, big guy. So that the sternum will, the cartilage holding the sternum to the ribs breaks, it gives way. So, and that actually makes CPR much easier.
In this case, you came in, he wasn't breathing, he was pulseless, his pupils were dilated, the heart monitor said there was no activity, correct? When you looked at his back, you noticed both modeling, which meant that the blood wasn't moving through his body?
Yes, and modeling was on the front as well.
Okay.
So as that blood cools, so it leaves the tissue, that's gonna hasten the modeling part of it.
So you noticed that when the shirt was then cut and
Yes.
he was exposed,
Yes.
as well as when he was rolled?
Yes,
And then you also noticed on the back the lividity of the blood pooling there?
yes.
When you, I guess, obtained all of that information, did you end life-saving measures?
Yes,
Who decides to end life-saving
Um,
measures?
I do, as well as the rest of the crew. So Scott Cowden is also a paramedic, and he concurred. So then we call that in, and we cease life-saving function, or attempts rather.
When you cease life-saving measures at a scene where someone's been shot
Mhm.
and is now deceased at the scene, do you leave sort of any attached medical devices with him?
Well, as little as possible. So what would have been left on him would have been defibrillator pads, probably EKG electrodes, and probably a CPR puck.
Now, when you arrived on scene or when you were exiting, did you ever notice any male outside that might have been with some police officers?
Oh, a person?
Yeah.
Yes. One person, one male.
And did you notice him when you arrived or when you left?
Well, when I arrived, my job in particular is to kind of get a larger overview of the scene. So I did notice a person talking with PD.
And when you observed this person, did you notice anything that he appeared to be injured in any way?
No.
So no obvious injuries to you?
No.
If you had been asked to treat him, would you have?
Of course.
Did you see that same person outside when you left?
Yes.
And when you left, did you observe anything about him again that he appeared to be injured in any way?
No.
Did you ever see a female and a female teenager at the scene?
Yes.
Where did you see them?
They were across the street from the house we were at.
Do you see that person in the courtroom today?
I see the adult. Yes.
Can you point her out and let us know what she's wearing?
Dark blazer at the defendant's table. Dark clothes. I'm not sure.
Okay. State will ask the record to reflect the witnesses identified the defendant.
Mitchell?
Did you overhear her talking or saying anything?
I did overhear her talking with the police officers, or someone said something about not getting invited to a pool party because of the commotion at the house or something. So
What? Did you have any formal interaction with her?
no.
When you sort of completed and left this scene, looking back and assessing it based upon your training, your experience, what you observed, and what was done to Mr. Vallow at the scene, would you agree that Charles Vallow was dead before you entered the house?
Yes.
Based upon your training, your experience, what you observed, and what was done to Mr. Vallow, would you agree that it was highly unlikely that anyone had performed CPR on Charles Vallow prior to fire arriving?
Yes.
I have no other questions, Your Honor.
All right, Cross.
Captain Keller,
Yes.
you were first on the scene?
The police department was first, but yes, we were the first fire unit.
First fire on the scene.
Mhm.
And can you explain to us what staging is exactly? I'm not really sure.
Sure. Staging, when there's some violent incident, the fire department, firefighters don't have protective equipment for that sort of scene. So we will go to a place where, close to whatever the dispatched address is, that we would be a place of safety, but close, so that as soon as the scene is made safe by the police department, then we would enter into the scene.
So that would be like a couple houses away, or?
Could be a couple
Really?
houses, could be behind cover. In this case, it was a gunshot was the call. So you want to make sure that you are a little ways away,
Okay.
in case there was more gunshots.
Right. So you parked somewhere on the street, but a couple houses down from the house. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then part of that staging is you stay there until you get the all clear?
Yes, until the police department says that it's safe to enter the scene.
Okay. And you were wearing body cam that day?
No, we don't wear body
Oh,
cams.
you don't wear body cam? Okay. You were just that was a picture from you on the body cam?
On the
On someone
police
else's
officers,
body cam?
yes.
Okay. Okay. Do you use any instruments to obtain current body temperature? Do you guys have an instrument for that?
No.
No? Would that help you give a more approximate time of calling a time of death?
It wouldn't help me. I'm not trained to do that. So we don't have that. It's not within our scope of practice to determine that.
It's not part of paramedics training?
No.
Okay. You explained the modeling being patchy looking skin
Yes.
because of no oxygen to the skin. Is that correct?
Decreased, yes.
And so will that continue to increase? I don't really understand. Like, would you say modeling is complete or in progress? How does that work?
I would say in progress. As less and less tissue had oxygenation, I would say it continues to model.
So would you say it was in early progress or late progress? How would you estimate that?
I could not say early or late, just modeling.
Just that modeling was present
Yes, yes.
at that point. So how long would it take for modeling to become present? That's kind of my question.
I don't know how long.
So it could be like
Different for different people,
People.
I suppose.
so it could be a minute, 5 minutes.
Yeah, he's already admitted.
Hold on.
he doesn't know.
Rephrase the question. I'll allow it, but make sure you let him answer before you ask your next question.
Okay. So it could be just a few minutes, possibly.
Possibly. I don't know.
Okay. And then lividity, you explained as a pooling of blood. The blood leaves the tissues and goes to the bottom. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you saw that as well?
yes.
And in your estimation, would that have happened soon? You know, well, that's not a good question. In your estimation, that had begun,
Yes.
and was it advancing? How far?
He had lividity on the back of his torso,
So does lividity
back of his arms.
start immediately after the heart stops? Is that what you were saying?
I suppose it does.
Okay. And if you were on any kind of medication, would that affect that as well?
I couldn't say.
And what time of death did you document? You were making the document, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what time of death did you document?
I did not put time of death, but I put a time of treatment being ceased, and I don't recall what that time was. It's on that report.
And you had stated that you were listening to dispatch on the radio, is that correct?
Yes.
So were you listening to the actual 911 operator speaking?
No, whoever is calling, if you call on a phone to a 911 operator, they would give that information to a dispatcher who would then dispatch a call with the pertinent information.
Okay, so you were getting kind of updates as it went along?
No, you get the initial call, and then if it were pertinent for us, like the scene is secure, PD says the scene is secure, go in, then we would get that. PD would call dispatch, and dispatch would then call us.
Okay, so were you aware at all that they had asked him to come outside?
No,
Okay. You just saw that he was outside, but you didn't know that the 911 operator had told him to come outside, is that correct?
I did not know who he was or how he was involved in it.
Okay,
You're right.
so on those dispatch updates, it wasn't saying like shooter is in-house or shooter is outside or anything like that? Okay, that wouldn't be,
Not to us.
That's what I'm
That
saying.
might be to the police department, but that's not something we would hear.
okay. In this case, Captain Keller, do you know for a fact that CPR had not been given?
I do not know for a fact.
And do you know for a fact that CPR had been given
I know for a fact that we gave CPR.
prior to your coming in?
No.
No further questions?
All right, redirect.
Which do you see first, modeling or lividity? When the heart stops and the blood is no longer pumping.
Modeling.
Okay.
I would expect to see modeling first.
And you told us, I think on direct, that lividity is something that you see much later.
Yes, I would expect that, yes.
Have you treated patients before within a few minutes of their heart stopping?
Yes,
Do you see lividity in those people?
No.
Do you see modeling in those people?
no. You see skin conditions change in those people, gray or cooling, moisture, but not modeling or lividity.
So you're not here to tell us how long it takes for those to form, right?
I don't know.
All you can tell us is that it's something that you see in patients who are deceased
Yes,
and have been deceased long enough, whatever time period that is for that to happen.
right. It is an indication of the patient no longer being a viable patient.
And that was one of the things that you noted and used in determining to end any life-saving measures.
Yes,
Now, is the only way to know if CPR has been given to be there with the person watching them?
No.
What else can tell you that CPR was given to a patient?
Well, PD on scene arriving would witness, the best way would be witness CPR.
That's the best way. Is there any other ways?
Well, yes. Again, you would have an indentation in the chest. The sternum would likely be have been cracked loose from the rib cage, and there would be, in the case of trauma, increased bleeding. You obviously you do CPR or CCR sometimes when there's not trauma, cardiac.
In this case, were other indicators the blood that was pooling only at the neck and not spread out further?
Yes.
The lack of pooling underneath the victim?
Yes, and the mechanical action of doing compressions with a gunshot wound right there would have spread blood in that area as well. It wouldn't just have gone where gravity is.
So where you saw is where you saw the blood pooling was where gravity, a low spot.
That was my interpretation of it. Yes.
And you did not observe spread blood across his chest?
No.
Would ongoing CPR movement of the blood through the body have also limited the modeling you may have seen?
Perhaps.
Ultimately, is it your opinion that it is unlikely that CPR was given to this patient prior to fire arriving?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
Are there any juror questions? I see at least one coming down. Please pass those down. Put on the white noise first. All right, we have some juror questions for you. Was there any attempt to gain venous access to administer medications to aid the heart and functioning, i.e. ephedrine? If no, why not?
It's not indicated for trauma. It doesn't, if there's no blood to pump or the heart has stopped pumping, increasing how fast the heart pumps with ephedrine would do nothing. So in trauma, it is not indicated.
Was ACLS protocol followed?
Yes.
Was there a physician patched in?
No, there's no patch required for cessation of treatment. It is part of our ability and part of our training to determine non-viability.
Are fire department personnel allowed to call a patient's death?
Yes. However, time of death is a different thing if that's what you're asking. In other words, we are allowed to stop attempting to do life-saving treatment if it's merely a recovery. So does that answer?
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have if the defense, first of all, let me check. Are there any other juror questions for this witness? I don't see any. The defense can follow up based on those questions if you want.
No questions, Your
All
Honor.
right, how about the state?
Just a couple. Sir, when would you use ephedrine?
Well, if you had just asystole, but it was a cardiac-based code. If the heart had stopped due to some disease state, electric shock, for instance, you would use epi. Are you saying epinephrine?
Yeah,
is what
yeah.
you're saying, right?
So when you're looking at whether or not to push drugs to try to get the heart to restart, you're looking at the type of trauma that caused the heart to stop.
And how long it's been since the heart stopped.
So in a place where you said there is trauma, meaning like a gunshot wound,
Like a hole in the vessel, yes.
so that is treated differently than if someone has a heart attack. And
Yes, yes.
you were asked about,
These are all algorithms, protocols that are given for us to operate on scenes under medical control to whoever asked about the patch.
what is then the ACLS protocol?
Advanced cardiac life support. And it's just, again, it's a flow chart. Are there obvious signs of death? Yes. Stop CPR.
So here, you followed that protocol and stopped CPR.
Yes. CCR technically, but yes.
You were asked about contacting a physician, a patch or something for a cessation of treatment.
Right.
Are there times where you do patch in with a physician?
Sure. You would patch en route, not for a code. You would patch en route and give a doctor, or actually it would be a nurse answering the phone, but you would let them know what you have and what treatment you have given and what treatment you are going to give en route to their facility to continue care. We are primarily to stabilize and turn over the patient, making it more viable for a rescue.
So when you terminate treatment because a patient is not viable, you cannot revive them, you don't need to talk to a doctor about that.
No, you need to call in that you did it. So there would have been a patch after that, but you don't have to call in to cease treatment.
So you don't need a blessing by a doctor to stop life-saving treatment.
Well, no, we have the blessing through our certifications and through our training. So we are operating under a doctor's license at any time we are operating. So that doctor or this group of doctors usually understands our training level and agrees to trains us to make that decision. Yes.
And so ultimately, as a paramedic, you have the authority to use that protocol to determine when you are no longer able to revive or
Yes.
save the life of a patient.
Seize life-saving functions. Yes.
And that's what you did here.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
All right, you can step down. We're going to take our lunch recess. I'll remind the jury of the admonition. We will resume at 1:30 p.m.
All the rest of the jury. So I wanted to see if we could ensure that there isn't any additional
All right,
investigation going on.
let's bring juror 15 in.
testifying as an expert or non-expert?
Are you calling him next?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, I last week on Monday asked you if you were objecting to him as an expert as much as late disclosure, and your at that time said it was late disclosure, that the case had been pending for 4 or 5 years, and that you felt that his disclosure a month approximately before trial was late. I then said I would go back and look at the state's 15.1 supplemental disclosure statement about his testimony. And it appears from the avowal made in that statement that he has relevant information that could assist the jury in making a determination. Do you want to be heard on that?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I feel like it was the state just putting him on as an expert so that he can give his opinion. I wasn't objecting to him as a detective and someone who's been there on the case, or as the scene agent, but he went from scene agent to expert so that he can give his opinion. And I don't think it is relevant that he can give his opinion at this time. We weren't allowed to have enough time to get someone to rebut his professional opinion.
Based on his training and experience, he was going to make an opinion about one of the gunshots being fired, possibly from the victim laying in a prone position.
As a firearms expert, and we haven't had a CV on how he's a firearms expert.
There was information on his training and experience contained within that 15.1 statement. I think additionally, questions about whether or not the extent of his training, the extent of his experience would probably go more toward the weight that the jury should give it rather than the credibility. I mean, then I should say rather than the admissibility of it. You're free to cross-examine him on his training experience or lack thereof. But at this time, I was inclined to allow him to testify. I'm hesitant to use the term as a full expert, but he has training and experience that could assist the jury in making a determination one way or the other based on that. So,
And he can't do that just as the scene expert or as the detective that was there?
well, I think he could, based on his training and experience, do that. I'm hesitant to call him an expert per se in the sense of a scientific type expert with scientific type testing, which requires more foundational evidence on someone's expertise. This type of testimony, I think, is testimony that a lot of people that have experience with guns could have an opinion on. Again, you can cross-examine him on his knowledge, his training, his experience, etc.
But will it be given to the jury that he's an expert in firearms? Yes or no?
I don't know. I guess I'll have to see how the testimony, what kind of foundation is laid for that by the state. All right. Anything the state want to supplement your argument or your 15.1 motion?
Your Honor, no. The defense was able to interview Dan Coons on March 21st of 2025. So after that was noticed, so they were given the opportunity to question him regarding any of his expertise or not. And really the state filed that in an abundance of caution. I think that a normal scene agent with sufficient information and knowledge and training might be able to discuss trajectory, but we wanted to make it clear that he did have that sufficient background, training, and expertise to do that.
Are you planning on eliciting testimony that an opinion as to which shot was first as opposed to which shot was second?
Only in that he did attend the autopsy, so he does also understand both that information, the shored wound, which goes into play in his determination of the trajectory, as well as that the other shot went through the victim's heart. So I think he can say that what he believes the trajectory for each shot is. I guess if someone wants to argue that he was shot in the heart first, or laying on the ground first and then got up and was shot a second time through the heart, that I don't think that he has that expertise to say that perhaps someone couldn't do that.
Well, I think the point I'm getting at is no one observed it that is going to testify to the shooting as far as I know so far. And that I don't even think your medical expert could definitively say this was shot 1 and this was shot 2. So that's fair cross-examination. But other than that, I'm going to allow his testimony. If you have a foundational objection or any other sort of hearsay objection or evidentiary objection, you can make it depending on what the question is.
Okay. I don't really understand how the trajectory is relevant to conspiracy, so I would like to make that objection. We're stipulating that there was 2 shots.
Okay.
Your Honor, just for the record, it's because the defense has noticed self-defense.
Right. All right. Let's bring the jury in. Yeah, why don't you do that? Hey, I was meant to ask Trey to move that. Hey, will you move this podium back? Because we're not going to need it until closing argument. Move this back over there before we bring
Thank you. Let me go get it. They call Daniel Coons.
All right, sir, come on up. You're going to stand right here and be sworn in.
I do solemnly swear that this one you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
All right, so sir, go ahead and come around here, have a seat to my left.
Sir, would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Daniel Coons.
And where do you work now?
Well, I am part-time temporary employed with the City of Chandler Police Department as a civilian criminal investigator for cold cases.
Where did you work before that?
Before that, I finished working as a detective with the Chandler Police Department. Specifically, the last assignment was robbery homicide unit.
How long did you work for the Chandler Police Department?
Just over 30 years.
Can you walk us through your different assignments at Chandler Police Department?
Sure. After my basic training at the academy, I was assigned to patrol. I did that for a little bit. And while I was in patrol, I was assigned as a crime scene officer. Now, that's still a patrol officer, but it's additional duties such as collecting evidence, processing crime scenes, taking photographs, things along those lines. After I did that, I went to crime prevention for a couple years. I did that and came back to patrol. Found a calling to go into detectives. I became a family crimes detective for 5 years. And from there, I became a homicide detective. During that time, I was also assigned part-time. We don't have a full-time SWAT team, so I was on that for just about 20 years.
Can you talk to us a little bit about your training to become a SWAT officer and what a SWAT officer does?
So there are many jobs within SWAT. There's regular officers that typically will do entry. There's some that specialize in breaching, some specialize in grenadiers, and then we also have the snipers. So I was cross-trained to do the regular basic entry officer stuff, as well as I became a sniper, and eventually I became a sniper instructor.
Okay, so what kind of training did you have to go through to become a sniper and sniper instructor?
So the sniper training was a basic 40-hour course. I attended that with the FBI. And as time progressed, I would attend advanced sniper trainings so that I could enhance my skill set. And eventually, after having been on as a sniper for a while, I attended a 40-hour sniper instructor course.
Who is that with?
That was with the American Sniper Association.
As a trainer for snipers, what did that entail?
It entailed having to have a good working knowledge of the actual job, the ballistics that the rifles need to perform, knowing how to train new snipers, knowing how to keep snipers that have achieved certification to keep their skill sets up, and to keep meeting the mandates of what would be expected of a police sniper.
Did you ever become a shooting reconstruction expert?
I did.
Can you tell us, what does that mean?
It means that I attended a course. It was a 40-hour course where it was completely hands-on. There was classroom, a lot of hands-on with you not only see the results of different impacts and things like that, but you watch it happen. And then in some cases, you actually get to make it happen. And then after that, you, as a class, you work together, putting things back together. And at the end of the 40 weeks, there is a test that you have to pass to get certification.
You said 40 weeks?
Oh, sorry, 40 hours, sorry.
So what does, I guess, shooting reconstruction mean, if you had to explain that to us?
It means being able to take information from a scene and being able to put it together to reconstruct as best as possible, humanly possible, what happened. For instance, you have bullet strikes. In some cases, you can actually get a good angle or ballistics information so that you can backtrack it and get an approximate area where the shooter had to have been. In many cases, you can help articulate whether information given to you was factual or if the information given to you was not. And this is very handy when there are no witnesses and you only have basically the person saying what happened.
Is there any type of certification process to be a shooting reconstruction expert?
Yes, at the end of that course, I had to successfully complete a test in order to get certification.
And when did that occur?
That was in, I believe, early 2017.
Who is that through? Who puts that on?
It was with Michael Haig,
And
his
who is-
company.
Who is Michael Haig?
He is part of a duo, father-son duo, that have become quite renowned for their ability to do ballistics and then teach it and train other people with it.
Okay. And have you utilized those skills that you learned in that shooting reconstruction course as a detective since then?
Yes, many times.
I assume you passed the certification test?
I did.
So on July 11th of 2019, were you working as a detective at that time for the homicide unit at the Chandler Police Department?
Yes, I was.
During the weekdays, what were your, I guess, work hours normally?
My normal work hours were Monday through Thursday, about 7 to 5.
When you are working as a detective, we've heard a patrol is out driving around. What are you guys doing?
Well, we carry a caseload. So many times we are working on the cases that we've taken previous days or weeks ahead of time. We're trying to come to a conclusion for those particular cases. But many times we also will have our radios on, just kind of listening to what's going on.
So are you at your office is at the main police station?
Correct.
Okay. On July 11th of 2019, did you hear some police radio traffic of a shooting at 5531 South Fort Peaks Place?
Yes, I did.
Did you respond to the scene?
After collecting some equipment and putting it in my vehicle, yes.
Is that normal then for detectives with homicide to go out to the scenes?
For the unit at the time, yes, it was.
Can you describe for us what the scene looked like when you arrived?
There were police vehicles around. There were officers that had established a perimeter. Some crime scene tape was already put in place. And they basically had frozen the scene.
Do you recall about how far away the scene was from the station where you were located?
15, 20-minute drive.
When you arrived there, were other detectives arriving? How does that work?
There were several of us that had self-deployed, and we were in various stages of being on our way there. So other detectives did arrive.
How do you decide which detective is going to do what at a scene when you all just show up there?
Well, a lot of times it's just a matter of who speaks up first saying, I'm going to take case. If it's after hours, then the person that's on call will usually be the person to do it. But if it's during regular business hours, it's kind of like a little wrestling match to figure out who's going to end up taking it.
What role did you get?
I got assigned the scene.
Okay. What does that mean to be assigned scene?
So the scene work, assigned scene, means that you're responsible for making sure that the scene is processed properly, accumulate whatever evidence is necessary, report back to the actual case agent your findings so that they can stay aware of how things are transitioning and being learned, and then they can start making informed decisions on what the next step is going to be.
Do you do that alone or do you have help?
It depends on the scene. In this particular case, I had Detective Duncan along with me.
And do you have does Chandler Police Department have any crime scene specialists or people that come up to help as well?
Yes, when I left the crime scene officer program, they had actually started a civilian program so that they could free up the officer's responsibility. So Chandler has several crime scene techs that will respond out when called.
And was someone called out to that scene?
Yes.
Do you sort of, as the scene agent, help, I guess, tell them what to do? Are you the person who's overseeing the whole scene?
It's more of a collaborative effort. We do provide direction on things that we're specifically interested in, but I've worked with them for many years, so it's pretty easy for us to just understand some of the basics that have to be done, such as overall photographs. Before we even think about manipulating anything or marking anything, we want to try to capture the scene as it was that we walked into it.
As the scene agent, did you create a diagram to just reflect what the scene looked like?
Yes.
And is that to scale?
It's not to scale. It's close, but it's not to scale.
Your Honor, if I can have my paralegal approach with Exhibit 5. And I think there's a second page in there.
It is behind, but it's not exposed to the back. Yes.
And is that the sketch and then the second page measurements of that diagram that you made?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state will move to admit Exhibit 5.
Any objection?
If it's not to scale, I don't know how it will be helpful, but no objection.
All right, Exhibit 5 is admitted.
And if I may publish.
Go ahead.
There we go. Hold on. That's not lit up. Oh, we might use the one behind you.
Right.
All right, can I have the detective? Oh, never mind. There we go. Okay, so this is Exhibit 5, the first page. Is this sort of an overview of the entire residence as well as the items of evidence that you collected?
That is correct.
So we understand where we see these little yellow placards. What do those indicate on your diagram?
On this diagram, they indicate the items of evidence for that particular room.
Okay. And do they each have a number associated with them?
Yes.
And is the second page of your diagram a reflection of what each of those numbers refers to?
Yes, it is.
We see in this A, B, and distances. What is that?
So the reference points, for this particular purpose, we did a triangulation method. So we take measurements from 2 known points in that room, and then we measure out to the item of interest. And then that was how we get a point A and a point B measurement.
All right, so at the first page here, that's the actual diagram. What is the reference points that you are using to make these distance measurements?
So the reference points are not depicted on this diagram, but in this particular room, if you look at the wall where items number 2 and 12 are, the upper or the left upper corner is B, and if you go straight down towards the kitchen area, that along that wall, that corner is A.
Okay, so when we see a reference measurement from A of 21 feet to the bat, we're talking 21 feet this way should be where the bat was?
No, you're talking 21 feet from that corner, straight line to the bat.
Okay, so whatever the closest measurement or closest way to get there would be?
Correct.
So for the bat, it would be something like that.
Correct.
Okay. And then when we see reference point B for the bat, then you're talking from this point to the bat?
Correct.
Okay, just so we understand that. When Chandler Police Department goes to a scene like this, do they utilize any type of photography system to help better document a scene so that you can see things more clearly sometimes than with photographs alone?
Yes, depending on the scene, we would use a system called the Lizard Q.
What is Lizard Q?
It's, in essence, a 360-degree photographic system that you set up on a tripod inside or wherever your location is, inside, outside, and you start the process, and the internal computer for this system specifically takes a set number of pictures where it's overexposed all the way to underexposed and images in between. And it does this at various locations along the path to create enough overlapping images. And then those images are stitched together and actually create a 360-degree sphere of the scene.
Did you have to get trained on how to use Lizard Q?
There was some training involved, yes.
If, again, my paralegal can approach with Exhibit 139, you can take a look at that.
Okay.
You recognize a thumb drive that is in Exhibit 139.
Yes.
What is on that thumb drive?
On this thumb drive will be the Lizard Q spheres.
Okay. And is there a reader on there so that you can actually view it?
Correct.
There's a piece of paper in there as well. What is that?
The piece of paper is a set of instructions on how to use the Lizard Q viewer so that you can view the spheres.
And did you initially the thumb drive to indicate that you had viewed it and you recognize that as the Lizard Q that you created on July 11th of 2019?
I have.
Or did you actually create that?
I created the thumb drive.
And that's your thumb drive that you put it onto?
Yes.
All right. State will move to admit Exhibit 139.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
139 submitted.
Judge, at this point, might I ask the witness to come down here to utilize the Lizard Q? I can sit at the table, but it needs to be put into a computer to do that, and I don't think we can hook it up there. All right, so if you can insert that on that laptop. In there. Yeah, thank you. I'm sure I might have to log in. That's right, I have to log into my computer, sorry. Oh, no, sorry. I'll let you in there. All right, can you talk us through, so you've opened the thumb drive to where that's at. How do you get to viewing this program?
So first, you'll have to double click on.
Hold on, one sec, I'm sorry, we're waiting for it to. Yes, the USB is in that laptop up there on the podium. There, yeah.
So first you need to double click on the lizardqviewer.exe so it can open it up. And then it's going to ask you where to look for the spheres. That's going to be. And then you just double click on the sphere you choose to open up, and it will open it up for you.
Can you make that larger so we can?
Waiting for it to respond.
Got it. Okay.
So once you have the sphere open, you want to just.
Yeah, if you can just tell us how to work that first, and then we'll ask a few questions.
So once you have the sphere open, if you press the left mouse button, you can actually move the images around. Without depressing the mouse button, you can zoom in and you can zoom out with the scrolling wheel. If you depress the right mouse button and use the scrolling wheel, this will darken or lighten your sphere. It will give you the ability to look outside as opposed to just the photographs washing it out normally so you can see inside. With this particular program, you can open up multiple windows, but you'll really only be able to view one at a time, but you can go back and forth between them.
So for this sphere that we're looking at, we see Charles Vallow there, correct?
Yes.
And then there's some white cards that we see around the room. What are those?
Those are 3x5 cards that officers have dropped in the scene. A lot of times they'll do that to help identify to detectives items that they observed and to be a warning to other officers to watch out for these items as you're either moving through or exiting the scene.
Is the Lizard Q program then used prior to the scene being documented? And let me say this. We saw in your diagram, Exhibit 5, that there were little yellow placards or numbered items. Is that something that's actually done in the scene? So we were looking at the bat, for instance.
Correct. So in this particular moment in time, we just merely left it with the placards there. Again, it was attempting to capture the scene as we as an investigative unit found it. There can be times that we'll do this first and eventually go through putting evidence placards down and then maybe do another sphere showing all the evidence placards.
So would it be fair to say that this is done to document the scene prior to police going through and having maybe digging through areas to find potential evidence?
Right. It's much like when we do overall photographs with the 35mm camera. This is just another enhancement of that.
For this room where we see Mr. Vallow, do we have two different spheres?
Yes, in this particular room, I did a lower sphere, and then I raised it on the tripod that you can see in it to another height, and then I did a sphere there. So we have a program that we can combine those and make it a measurement sphere. So we could do measurements linear, but not to and from the camera because of its limitations.
So what is provided here is without measurements.
That is correct.
And without anything being marked yet.
Aside from the 3x5 parts.
Can you show us the lower level sphere as well?
This is the lower level.
Okay, then the upper level one, sorry.
As you can see, your point of view has changed a little bit, but the room has remained the same.
Okay. And that's all using the same initial placement of that tripod, but just moving the camera height up higher or lower?
Correct. The tripod has the ability to elevate to the platform that the camera is actually on.
All right, thank you. Your Honor, could I have the witness go back to the?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to turn this for now. So, although that documents what the scene looked like that we saw prior to the marking of evidence, as a scene agent, do you still utilize photographs?
100% yes.
Why?
It's just an added failsafe. The Lizard Q can, if you do the Lizard Q, then you're restricted to just the view from where that camera is at. When we do overall photography, we actually move around and get it from different perspectives. This is just another tool in the ability to show what the scene looked like.
Oh my gosh. Did you also photograph rooms where the Lizard Q was not used?
Yes.
When you photograph a scene, what is the process for that?
I'm not sure I understand.
Sure. When you enter a scene as a scene agent and you are looking at one like this, do you just go into the room where this person is and just photograph that area and that's it?
No, we would photograph the entire place to document it. The Lizard Q, because of the volume that it takes and not necessarily information that would require the setup of a sphere, then we will just stick with the crime scene photos for those particular rooms.
Okay. So I can have my paralegal approach with exhibits 6 through 138. You can look at those and let me know if you recognize what those photographs are.
Okay.
Do you recognize all those photos?
Yes, I do.
Do they accurately depict 5531 South Four Peaks Place, both before and during and after processing it?
Yes, through various stages of the investigation.
Your Honor, if I can have those shown to the defendant.
Yep.
Now, Detective, when you guys are processing a scene, in addition to photographing it, are you also looking for items that you may want to collect and actually bring back with you?
That's correct.
Can you talk to us about what procedures you use to collect and impound physical items of evidence that you're going to take with you?
Sure. It depends on the type of physical evidence, what the circumstances of the offense are. So the type of collection method can vary, but inevitably we'll identify it first, then we'll document it with photographs, and then we will come up with a plan that we're going to recover the evidence. And typically on scenes, I like to work in a particular direction collecting evidence. Others have their own method, but that's the method I typically use. And then I work along with the crime scene tech, and we'll go through exactly what we talked about. We'll have the overall pictures taken. We identify things that we believe are going to be relevant, and then we'll, for identification purposes, we'll usually affix some form of evidence tag, a marker, things along those lines. Not all items are actually taken. Some are actually just documented because it's impractical to remove certain things, such as a slab of concrete or something like that. So depending on the situation. So after it's documented, first with photograph, placard, photographed again, and then we will collect it. If DNA is an issue, the crime scene tech will be the one that'll take care of the method for doing it, and they will take the protective measures, whether they do gloves, swapping gloves out, or they do face masks, depending upon the nature of the evidence. If it's super DNA critical, then we will pull all precautions out. In this particular case, it was not DNA critical.
Do you still wear like gloves or anything like that when you are collecting these items of evidence?
Absolutely.
And are you using them and changing them to ensure, for instance, you don't transfer blood from one item onto another?
Right, and typically that's what our crime scene techs will do. We will direct the method or the order we're going to collect, and then we'll go through that. And they'll be the ones that'll photograph. They'll change the gloves, place it in the envelope. Typically, it's a paper envelope, and then we'll move on to the next item and repeat the method.
So in this case, I'll put 5 back up if I can have the Alamo. Thank you. What was your process for how you wanted to go through this home in reviewing, collecting the evidence?
So for this particular method, I chose to work from the north towards the south, collecting as we went. Item 1 being the hat, which is at the north end of the room. And then it was kind of a toss up between 2 and 3. So I just decided to go ahead and go for 2, and then we would work our way down from there.
Okay. And so we see in this diagram, north is up this direction.
It's to the left of the image, yes.
And so in the photographs that you're taking of these individual items, do you see those placards or something that shows a 1?
Yes.
Okay. Now you talk about in this that there are scenes where you may have difficulty collecting an item. In this scene, did you actually cut out some pieces of evidence to bring back with you?
Yes, and that's why you'll see numbers higher than what was originally in the room associated to those items.
Okay. When you are processing a scene, do you always know what may be relevant or not relevant?
Not always immediately.
Um, Is that one of the reasons why the entire residence is photographed instead of just what appears to be relevant here in that one room?
Correct.
So that later, if anyone wants to look at another room, that's been documented adequately.
Right.
When you're going through a house, even though you walk in and you see Charles Vallow on the ground there, are you still checking all of the rooms to see if there could potentially be something of evidence there?
Well, certainly, I'm no stranger to not having all of the information initially when I show up. So I will go through and I'll look at the residence to see if there's anything that actually stands out immediately. And maybe I'll be able to ask a few questions of whoever's doing the interviews to see if there's any relevance to it.
So are you looking for instance, any bloody items?
That would be important.
Are you looking for any projectiles or anything else that might be not in this room?
Certainly. Well, it's passed through walls.
Are you looking for any evidence that might be related to this individual, Charles Vallow, like wallets or things like that that might have been left somewhere in the house?
Yeah, anything that could properly identify who was or may have been present at the time.
Okay. And that's sort of all those photographs as well.
Correct.
When you photograph a scene, do you start at the outside of the home?
Yes, we will typically start at the outside and work our way in and carefully avoid the items of evidence that have been readily made identifiable.
So Exhibit 6 here, what are we seeing here?
So this would be the front of the residence. It faces west, and we're looking at the main entrance that's just off to the right of the closed single garage door, and that door is open.
Your Honor, we're gonna have to object. We haven't agreed to admit any of these pictures that are being posted.
I'm sorry, I did show them. The state will move to admit exhibits, 6 through 38, or 138.
Any objection?
To some of them, I mean, they're very similar, and I don't think that they all need to be put on there.
So your objection is that some of them are cumulative?
Yes. Yes, Your
Right.
Honor.
Let me see them. What numbers?
Yeah, which number, sorry?
6 through what?
138.
Do you have specific ones that you believe are cumulative?
Yeah, I'd have to go back through to get them specifically. I have some.
Well, let me browse them. While I've reviewed exhibits 6 through 138, while many of the exhibits show multiple pictures of the same items, there's no two pictures that are the same. They show different angles, different distances, different perspectives, and in some cases, the item as it was found, as opposed to someone picking it up and showing it from a different angle. So they're somewhat cumulative, but the court will admit those exhibits. They may help assist the jury in visualizing the scene and determining where things were at the scene.
So we talked about Exhibit 6 being the front of the house. The door that you were talking about there, is that the door we saw in the lizard queue that was in that front room?
Yes, that's the double front main door.
Exhibit 7 and 8, was that to document a vehicle that was there?
Yes, again, to try to do overalls of the scene to show how it was when we got there.
At that time, did you know whose vehicle that was?
I did not have the opportunity, nor did I run the license plate of it, but it was documented, and I believe later on it was learned.
Okay, thank you. But not something you were responsible for.
Correct.
When we get to Exhibit 9 and then 10, is this sort of coming up to, I'm going to pull this back a little.
Yes, that's approaching closer to the door.
11, which way are we looking as we enter the door here on 11?
So you would be looking to the northeast, northeast.
And you had talked about in a diagram a hat. Is that sort of what we see here?
Correct.
Is Exhibit 12 sort of looking the opposite way from that sort of vantage point,
Correct.
sort of south?
Southeast, yeah.
And does Exhibit 13 show us what the front entryway looks like?
Correct. So this image would have been taken from the northeast corner of the main room there.
We can see in this then the hat with the placard of 1.
Correct.
So when we are looking at your diagram, Exhibit 5, and we see the 1, that's what that's referring to.
Correct.
Exhibit 14, can you tell us our perspective of what we're looking at here?
So you're standing in roughly the northwest corner of the room, just down from the entryway, and you're looking south.
So we start to see some of those white cards there. Is this before you have added in the yellow placards?
Correct. This would have been part of the overall photographic effort.
Okay. So when we're looking at this house, I'm going to put up Exhibit 15. Can you describe for us this wall here? So can you go all the way around that?
So that wall with the mirror itself is blocking where the kitchen is. There's an entrance to the kitchen to the right of that wall. And again, you could get to the kitchen through the left opening as well, but I think there's also like a family room by that area.
Okay. But it's open. One could walk through either of these ways and come around back out the opposite door?
Yes.
Okay. So Exhibit 16, we see Charles as he lay when fire has left him at this point.
Correct.
So the items we see on him, we've heard of them cutting his shirt and things like that. This is you documenting how he was when you started to come into the scene,
Correct.
after fire's already treated him and determined he was deceased.
Yes.
Over here, we start to see an area. What is right over there?
So just past that most southern index card is a hallway that extends to a bathroom and I believe at least 2 bedrooms.
Looking sort of to the north, what is this hallway here?
So now we're just looking north past the entryway. You can see the hat in the right part of the image there, and that would lead up to the master bedroom garage.
Okay. When you are looking at a scene like this, where you have a shooter, are you wanting to document all the different views of the items and the victim where they lay in the scene?
Yes, it's important to establish where things were at when we found them.
Okay. Now, are you able to tell us, for instance, if a casing rolled or a bullet rolled as fire is there or initial officers coming through yourself?
Having not been present to see it, I would not be able to tell you if any item happened to have been manipulated.
Okay. Does 19 show us part of that hallway that we're talking about to bedrooms?
Yes, it does.
And then right next to it, would that be the sort of doorway into the kitchen?
Correct. That's past this mirror on the left would be where the wall rounds a little bit and leads to the kitchen.
So Exhibit 21 here, we see this hat. Why, in 22, that you marked as number 1, why do you collect something like that?
The indications to me, initial assessment was that there was some kind of a struggle that took place, and it was unknown at the time who the hat belonged to. So it was decided that this could be important.
Are you given more than one chance to go through a house and try to collect evidence, or is it sort of a one-time shot?
Usually it's a one-time shot.
So if you aren't sure if something is relevant, do you collect it?
Yes.
So that later, if you determine it is, you have it?
Correct.
And if you determine it's not, then no harm, no foul?
Well, I don't know about no foul, but yeah.
So in this case, did you know whose hat that was?
I did not.
Let me put up 15 first. In the diagram, we had seen a number over in this area. What was that?
The item should be marking a baseboard, and there is a bullet strike in the baseboard.
All right, I'm putting up 23 here, and then I'm going to put up 24. What are we looking at here?
So what you're looking at is the actual bullet strike where it peeled away a portion of the baseboard, but remained embedded in the baseboard.
So I'm going to put up, as we kind of go closer, 24, 25, 26. Did you eventually show in 27 that you guys pulled back some of that board to get to show what was embedded in there?
Correct. And at some point, we were needing to recover that projectile.
Okay. And so in 28, does this reflect, now you've kind of photographed what it looked like when you first saw it, and then as you peeled it back and the actual bullet or projectile that was removed from there?
Correct.
All right. And 29, show that bullet from a different angle?
Yes.
When you were looking at this, and I'm going to put 30 and 31, was there actually some sort of white paint transfer on part of that?
There's a little bit of transfer of material to the nose of the bullet, yes.
I can have my paralegal approach with 243 and 245, or sorry, 243 and 235. Detective, do you recognize what those are?
Yes, I do.
What are those?
This would be the section of baseboard that we removed from the wall, as well as the projectile that we had removed from the baseboard.
Okay, and I'm going to put up 34 here. So that shows that after you pulled out that section of that baseboard,
Yes, after it was cut out.
and then it's the projectile that you recovered in there? From that location, the other exhibit?
The other exhibit is the projectile that was recovered from there, yes.
State will move to admit 243 and 235.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
You said 243 and 245?
35,
Oh.
243 and 235.
It's ordered to make 243 and 235.
If I can have my paralegal go retrieve that. So I'm going to put up, to give us again a different perspective, 17 here. We've talked about, as you're kind of working your way down, you told us you started with the hat, then you went over to the baseboard, and then you went back to the west wall.
Yes.
And so we see in this photograph, exhibit 17, what you have marked as item 3. What was that?
That was the baseball bat?
And you show exhibit 35. Is that a closer up of that bat?
Yes, it is.
Were photographs taken of the sort of edge of the bat itself?
The fat edge, I guess?
The fat edge.
Sure, I
It's
don't know
bat,
nomenclature of the bat, so yeah,
Not the handle. How's that?
yes.
When you were looking at this, were you looking for any blood? And I'm going to put up 37, 38, 39, or any biological material.
We were looking for visible evidence, yes.
Did you observe any yourself?
I did not.
Did the edge look pristine and clean to you, visibly?
Visibly, I did not see any sort of biological evidence on it.
Did you note any biological evidence anywhere on that was visible to you?
I did not.
If my paralegal can approach with 249. Do you recognize what 249 is?
Yes, I do.
And is that the bat that we have seen in these photos marked as item number 2? We see here in exhibit 35.
Yes.
State will move to admit 249, Your Honor.
Any objection? 248, 249 are admitted.
So that was item number 3. I'm going to put up exhibit 40. Do we see a placard there for number 4?
Yes.
And what was item number 4? And I'm going to put up exhibit 42 here.
It is a full metal jacket projectile.
And in 43, does that show a different angle of that projectile?
Yes.
So this projectile was recovered to the east, maybe northeast of Charles Vallow.
Yes.
And was there any visible damage to this projectile?
There was some deformation to the projectile.
If I can have my paralegal approach with 239. Do you recognize 239?
Yes, I do.
And what is 239?
This would be what's identified in the picture as item number 4, the projectile that was found close to the body.
State will move to admit 239.
Objection.
No objection.
239 is admitted.
When you are photographing the scene, are you, again, we know this is after fire has been there.
Yes.
Were you present when fire was there?
I believe their engine was still there when I arrived on scene, but they were not inside.
So were you present when they were working on Mr. Vallow in home?
No,
So do you know whether or not they had moved this projectile at all?
I do not.
When you were looking at Mr. Vallow himself, I'm going to put up 41, did you notice something on his left hand?
On the left hand, yes.
What did you notice on his left hand?
Substance consistent with apparent blood.
When you were looking at Mr. Vallow, did you note any other blood on his left arm?
I did not see any.
And when you are looking at Mr. Vallow, are you looking at the rest of his body to see if you noted any blood on his right arm?
Correct. I did not see any on the right arm. I did not manipulate the body until the medical examiner showed up.
So visibly, as he laid there in that supine position on the back with his arms out, what you were able to see, did you see any other blood like we observed on his left hand anywhere else?
On his chest, there was a little bit of blood, but on his extremities, I did not see any.
And so when we talk about his chest, is this the blood that we see here, sort of?
Above and below the pads.
Did the blood to Mr. Vallow's left hand stand out to you in any way?
Yes, it was interesting that it's just on that one particular part, but it's not completely surprising.
Was there any blood on the floor around where his hand was?
No.
So although we've heard of blood pooling underneath him, there was no blood around his hand as it laid there.
Correct.
So going back again to Exhibit 17, we've now talked about 1, 2, 3, and 4, correct? Do we see a
Yes.
placard number 5 there?
Yes,
What was placard number 5? And I'm going to put up Exhibit 45 now.
it was a shell casing.
And I'm going to put up 46 to be closer of it. And 47. Were you able to determine what caliber that was?
Yes, it belonged to a .45 automatic pistol.
Now, as a police officer, do you have a semi-automatic pistol yourself?
At least one.
Okay. And I guess as a reserve officer, do you still have some?
I'm not a reserve officer. I'm just retired. But yes, I still possess firearms.
All right. So in terms of a semi-automatic handgun and seeing this type of casing, can you tell us when you fire a gun, where does this come from? What is that?
So in this particular image, we are looking at what's commonly called a head stamp. That's going to be the opposite end of where the actual projectile would be inserted into the casing. The circular ring that you see in the head stamp there is actually what's called the primer, and that's what the firing pin hits to initiate the primer charge, which ignites the powder and then sends the projectile through the barrel.
So if I put up 48 here, we have a projectile that goes through the barrel. What is this item here? It's casing.
So this is what's left of the cartridge. So it's the casing. This is what holds the powder charge, it holds the primer, and it holds the projectile all in one unit until it's initiated with the firing pin striking the primer. After the charge starts the projectile down the barrel, then the most semi-automatic weapons will actually, the slide will start moving back to the rear, and there's a piece of the slide called an extractor that goes around that back rim of the projectile there, around the head stamp, and it pulls it backwards out of the chamber. And then it completes the cycle going all the way to the rear where it hits what's called an ejector, and that kicks the casing out of the gun and readies it to go forward, stripping a new cartridge off the magazine, if there is one, and loading that into the chamber ready for the next shot.
So when you fire the gun, projectile goes out the barrel and this casing gets kicked out.
Correct.
So I'm going to go back again to Exhibit 17 where we see 5. And I'm going to put up Exhibit 49. To the south of 5 here, did you find another casing?
Yes.
Is that what we see in Exhibit 49 and 50 as placard 6?
Yes, it is.
So were those located in the generally in the same location?
Fairly close to each other.
When a casing is ejected from a gun, do they just plop down and stay right where they landed?
No, there are many different types of firearms out there, so the casings can eject in different directions. Some will, or most will eject out to the right. Some will go farther back towards the right. Some will go forward. Some will go center. Some actually kick higher up in the middle. It really depends on the manufacturer, the process, how the person's holding the firearm. So there are a lot of things about it, but there's usually sufficient energy designed in it so that it kicks the casing out so it doesn't interfere with the feeding of the next cartridge.
In your experience firing guns, Can casings bounce or roll or move after they are ejected?
Yes.
Item that we see is number 6 and number 50 there. What caliber casing was that?
It's a little blurry.
Do you recall if it was the same 45 caliber as the other one?
They were both 45 caliber.
I can have an approach with 238 and 240. Do you recognize 238 and 240?
Yes.
Where are those?
These are the casings recovered from the main room where the body was.
What we saw as 5 and 6 in the exhibits?
That's correct.
State will move to admit 238 and 240.
Any objection to 248 and 240?
No objection.
248 and 240 are admitted.
238 and
Oh,
240.
I'm sorry, 238 and 240? Okay, they're admitted.
Now, do the police move the body when you're processing the scene? Do you go around and move Mr. Vallow around?
No,
Do you have to wait for someone from the medical examiner's office to come do that?
that is correct.
Sort of the body is their responsibility?
Yes,
Are you present while they're doing that?
absolutely.
And are you looking for any other evidence that may be on, around, underneath Mr. Vallow?
Correct.
In this case, did the medical examiner's office come and remove Mr. Vallow's remains?
Yes, they did.
Once his remains were removed, did you document by photographing, we see here in 53, the blood that was left behind?
Yes, typically we would call this the void image to show what it looked like after the body has been removed.
Now, is the blood been moved somewhat by the body itself being moved?
Correct. Part of the process is the medical examiner's investigator will manipulate the body by rolling it from one side or the other to get a good look at the side that's not visible with how it was laying. And then they'll work on manipulating the body into the bag for transport.
So looking at the void or the blood pool that we see here, has it been altered somewhat from what we saw or observed while Mr. Vallow's body was there due to the movement of his remains?
That would be safe to say, yes.
Okay. Did you and other officers clean up that blood pool?
Yes.
And in doing so, did you observe anything on the floor?
Yes. Underneath, well, once the blood was cleared off, we could actually see a defect in the wooden floor that was consistent with the projectile strike.
All right, I put up exhibit 56. There's a placard number 13 there. Is that far away so we can see the location of where that is in perspective to the room?
Yes.
Having seen Mr. Vallow's remains in the room and then having them removed, were you able to determine approximately where this defect that we see marked as 13 was located in relation to Mr. Vallow's body?
Yes, it would have been consistent with being under his left shoulder.
Did you take closer up photos of that defect?
Yes.
You put up 59 that shows that placard. Is this what you were talking about?
That is correct.
How did you, well, let me ask you this. Did you look at the rest of the floor to see if there were anything else that looked like that?
Yes, that was consideration. So we did look at the rest of the floor.
So you went through that whole room to see if you found any similar type of defects on it?
Correct.
Did you?
No.
So this was the only one that looked like that?
Yes.
And I'm going to put up 58. So we see other defects in the ground. What made this different?
The size of it, the directionality, the fact that it was directly underneath the shoulder where we observed an exit wound, and the fact that there was a projectile found on the floor in proximity to this defect.
Was it, let me ask you this. As a person who has processed crime scenes, fire guns themselves, did it appear to you consistent with a bullet strike?
Yes, it did.
And what were you basing that on?
The way the indentation is and how it tapers up, coming away from the body in the same direction that the projectile was located.
Did you and other detectives remove that piece of wood?
Yes, with great pain, yes.
All right, putting up exhibit 60. Is that to show the piece removed and exhibit 61 to show the actual piece?
Correct.
And did you write on it so that you would be able to later look at that piece and know how that fit into the puzzle?
Yes, it was important to make sure to establish directionality on that piece.
I can have my parallel approach with 240 foot one turn.
You don't want to? Why do?
I can have my parallel approach with 244. Do you recognize 244?
I do.
And is that the actual piece of floor that was removed from 5531 South Four Peaks Place?
Yes.
State will move to admit 244.
Any objection? 244 is admitted.
And is that what then we see here in Exhibit 61?
It is.
Obviously, this is inside plastic, but this is the piece you're talking about.
Correct.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the rest of the house, and then eventually I'm going to come back to this. You told us that.
Would now be a good time to take our
Sure,
afternoon
yes.
recess? Since we're close to 3, why don't we take our afternoon recess, stretch break, et cetera? Please remember the admonition. We'll resume in about 15 minutes.
All rise for the jury. What did you note here?
So there was again another bag, and more specifically, there was a pistol that was laying on the floor.
We start with 72 here. Was that just like a garbage bag with some clothes in it?
Yes.
So of more relevance to you was what was next to it?
Correct.
What did you find there? What is this orange thing there? And we see a whole lot of placard numbers.
Right. So the placard numbers are obviously identifying particular items that are going to be seized as evidence. That we have the orange bag with what appears to be a gun box inside, and then we have the pistol. And the 3 placards next to the pistol are specific for the pistol itself, the magazine from the pistol, and potentially the chambered round in the pistol.
Okay. So 74, is that a close-up of that pistol?
It is.
What kind of pistol was that?
Pardon.
What caliber was it?
It's a 45.
Is that the same caliber as the casings that you had found in the front room next to Charles?
Yes.
Does this show another angle of that pistol in 75?
Yes, looking at the top of the pistol.
When the pistol, as we see, is picked up in 76, the individual's wearing gloves. Why is that?
Again, to help preserve the evidence, in the event that DNA were to need to be done, we could articulate that we did not touch it with our bare hands to impart our DNA onto it.
Are you visually looking at this gun to see, and this is 77, if there is any visible biological evidence, blood on this gun?
Yes, we do look at them to help determine that.
And did you observe any biological evidence, any blood or what appeared to be blood on this handgun?
No, ma'am.
If you had observed that, would you have noted it and photographed it and documented it?
Yes.
Now, when you got this gun, was it loaded?
Yes.
And in 78 and 79, is that photographs of the magazine in the gun?
Correct.
So when we talk about the magazine, I'm going to go back to showing Exhibit 76. Where is that in this picture?
So you can see the base of the magazine at the bottom of the grip, close to what would be the individual's left thumb. There's that black piece of plastic that extends horizontally across the base of the grip.
And so that's the magazine that you then took out that we see in 79.
Correct.
Okay. And why is the magazine removed?
Well, we have to make the weapon safe, and that's the first step in making it safe, is to remove any more source of ammunition that could feed into it.
Was there a cartridge or a live round in the chamber?
Yes.
So how do you make that safe then?
Well, the only way you can is to manipulate the slide to force the extractor to pull the cartridge out, and the ejector kicks the cartridge out.
Okay. Also in this photo, there was this orange bag, and you had told us that inside of it, we can kind of see the corner here. We see it better in 82. Did you remove an item from that orange bag?
Yes.
And I'm going to show 83, 84. What is that we see there?
That is a gun box that is consistent with the firearm that was laying on the floor.
So consistent with the 45 caliber handgun.
Correct.
And that was inside this orange bag. Was there any live rounds? And I'm going to show you Exhibit 85, also in that orange bag.
Yes.
And a closer up of that, was that another 45 caliber round?
It is.
And so when we say it was live, it hadn't been fired yet.
Yeah, cartridge has not been fired.
I'm going to start then by having my paralegal can take up Exhibit 237 and 246. You can approach them with 237 and 246. Do you recognize 237 and 246?
Yes,
And is that the gun and the magazine that we see here in Exhibit 76?
it is.
The gun that was found in that pink room?
Correct.
State will move to admit 237 and 246.
Any objection?
Is Mr. Coons saying that he didn't take those, but he recognizes them from being in evidence? Is that correct?
I think he testified he recognizes them to be the same items from the scene.
No objection.
237 and
246.
237 and 246 are admitted.
Now I have my paralegal approach with 247, 248, and 236. Sorry.
That's what I'm saying. Foundation.
Do you recognize 247, 248, and 236?
Yes, I do.
And are those what we saw in Exhibit 83, the gun case, as well as in 73, the orange bag that the gun case was in? And hold on. What we see in 85, the single live round that was found inside that bag.
Correct.
State will move to admit 247, 248, and 236.
Any objection?
Just a foundation, Your Honor. If he could give a serial number or something that could authenticate those?
Well, he testified that those were the items that he recovered from the scene, so I guess you can question him about that on cross. Give me the numbers again.
247, 248, and 236.
Those items are admitted.
I'm going to show you, as you continued sort of in this hallway, Exhibit 88. Do you, can you put us into perspective of where that is? I'm going to put 19 sort of back up. Where is, what we see, this room with the blue on it, Exhibit 88?
So those two doorways would be on the south side of the hallway that leads up to the pink or maroon room. Specifically, the blue one would be the most southwestern bedroom of the home, and then the other doorways to the hall bathroom.
Okay. So again, did you go into this blue room, and look for any potential items of evidence?
Yes.
So in the room with the sort of child themes on it, did you find anything bloody in there?
No, ma'am.
Any ammunition in there?
No.
In the pink room, we saw the gun. Did you look in the floor of that room to see if there was any blood drops in the pink room?
Yes.
So I'm gonna go back 1 second to 87. So on this floor and the bed and around here, did you notice any blood in that room?
No.
No blood swiped across a wall?
No.
No blood on that orange case?
The orange bag?
Correct.
No.
No blood on the black case for the gun?
No.
Or the extra magazines that were in there, any blood on those?
No. None seen.
Okay. So then in the blue room, did you do the same sort of thing? Look to see if there was any bloody clothing, any blood swipes, any blood drops, that sort of thing in there?
Correct. No items of bloody anything was discovered in there.
Okay. And nothing on the floor either?
Correct.
When we go to 92, you said that was the hall bathroom next to it?
Yes.
Do we see that in 93 and 94 here?
Yes.
Did you look in everything like even the sinks to see if you saw blood there?
Yes.
Along the countertop to see if you saw blood there?
Correct.
Did you note any bloody items, any that was anywhere in that bathroom?
I did not.
When you were walking down that hallway to those rooms, did you look on the floor there to see if there were any blood drops or blood trails or swipes of blood on the wall?
Yes.
Did you observe any there?
No.
So 98 here, can you put us in perspective of what we're seeing?
So this would be towards the feet of the body, where the kind of the hall splits to the kitchen and then to the bedrooms that we were just discussing.
Okay. 99, is this like a lanyard that was hanging on the wall there?
Yes.
So wasn't knocked off or anything?
No, it's where we found it.
And as you go through 99 there, is that how you entered, one of the ways you could enter into the kitchen?
Correct.
And is this sort of a view of that?
Yes.
So in the kitchen, did you look on the floor there to see if there were any blood drops?
Yes.
Along the cabinets to see if there were blood drops there?
Yes.
When you got to the sink, I'm going to put exhibit 103 and then 104. Did you observe a small amount of what appeared to be blood on the faucet itself?
Yes.
Did you look sort of as well in the sink itself to see if there was any blood there?
Yes.
Did you observe any there?
Did not see any visible blood.
Now, when you're going through the house and looking to see if you note any bloody items or any other items of evidence, are you looking in things like trash cans?
Yes.
So was this a trash can in the kitchen, for instance?
Yes.
And did you note any bloody rags or towels or anything thrown in there?
No, ma'am.
Okay. You said that there was also sort of a living area in there.
Correct.
I'm going to put up exhibit 112 to get a better perspective of that. So is this the doorway we were talking about?
Yes.
And so the kitchen here opens up into the living room.
Correct.
Did you look through that area to see if you saw any blood on the floors?
Yes.
Did you observe any?
No.
Did you look through that area to see if there was any blood on any of the furniture or walls or anything like that?
Yes.
Did you observe any of that?
No.
In Exhibit 111, where does this doorway lead?
That leads back out to the mirrored room, the main room where the body is.
So when we were talking about the two doorways, one sort of directly into the kitchen and the other sort of more towards the end of the kitchen living area.
Yes,
This is what you were talking about.
correct.
And in Exhibit 113, can we see sort of both of those doorways?
Yes.
Okay. And 114, a overall perspective of that.
Another perspective of it, yes.
So throughout this whole area, again, you're looking for anything that might be relevant because you have one chance to document it, correct?
Correct.
When we talk about 115 and we talked about the original layout of the house, is this that front entrance area again?
Yes, it is.
And where are we looking in this perspective?
So you were looking in a north direction.
Where does that head towards?
It heads towards the garage, the master bedroom, and I believe a room that could double as an office.
Okay. So when we go along this wall here that we see in 115, 116, 117, is this the sort of what we would call office or playroom?
Yes.
Okay. Did you look through there, see anything bloody in there?
We looked and found nothing.
Was there a powder room in this area?
Yes,
And did you search that as well?
it was.
And again, you're looking in sinks and in trash cans?
Correct.
And did you observe in 121, 122, the trash can and toilet and sink, any bloody items there?
No,
Was there a laundry room in this area?
there was.
And I'm putting up 123 and 124. Did you look through the laundry area to see if you saw any bloody items in here?
It was looked through, yes.
So although there's some clothing and some folded towels, none of those had blood evidence on them.
Nothing that stood out with blood evidence, no.
And then again, even looking in the trash cans that we see in 126 and 127.
Correct.
– 128, are we now heading into the master bedroom?
Yes,
129, was there sort of an office setup in there as well, 130?
correct.
And are you, again, looking through the floor, looking everywhere for any items of evidence?
Correct. Anything to indicate that what happened in the other room transferred into this.
Okay. Or any cleanup from after it?
Correct.
As you went through this, did you do the same sort of thing, looking through the floor and walls, 132, 133, for any blood evidence?
Correct.
Did you observe any in the bedroom?
No.
Do you go into the master bathroom and check there as well?
Yes.
The 134, 135. Did you observe any evidence, blood evidence in the master bathroom?
It did not.
And again, checking even the toilet itself as well as the trash can
Yes.
that we see in 137 and 138. So other than the one drop or whatever smear of blood on the kitchen faucet, did you see any other blood evidence at the scene?
No.
Let me put that in a different way, other than what was around Charles's remains.
Correct. No trails, no swipes, nothing that other than the sink faucet in the kitchen and the area where the body was.
Okay. So you told us that you cleaned up the blood there and you saw that defect in the ground that was consistent, or in the flooring that was consistent with a bullet strike, correct?
Correct.
When you were looking at this scene, actually I'm going to start with 15, did you note injuries to Charles Vallow himself?
Yes.
On the front of him, where did you note the gunshot wounds to him?
Immediately before the medical examiner arrived, the only visible gunshot wound was in the lower left abdomen area.
Did you learn one it was in the chest underneath some of the medical debris?
Yes.
When you are looking at this scene, are you able to utilize part of your shooting reconstruction training to try to determine any type of trajectory, or if anything is consistent with trajectory based upon the scene itself, items that you are able to view there?
I do try to apply my knowledge of that to the scenes as I go to them and go through them, and with whatever evidence or information comes directly back to me.
Are you relying on, for instance, the location of Mr. Vallow?
That's part of it.
Are you relying on the location of the casings?
That's another part of it. Not a major part, but it is another part.
Are you relying on the location of the projectiles?
Yes.
When the medical examiner came, were you also able to see exit wounds on Mr. Vallow?
Yes, in conjunction with also the chest wound.
Okay, so when the medical examiner came, you saw a second injury to the front side of him.
Correct.
Where was that approximately?
In the sternum.
So for us, somewhere in,
About the center, maybe roughly the center of the chest.
okay. So and the other one you said was in the abdomen.
Yes.
When the medical examiner was there, where did you observe other gunshot wounds on his back?
I observed another one that would have been just up to the left of the spine, and then another one that would have been by the left shoulder blade scapula area.
Okay. Now, given the number of casings, did you start with an idea that there might be two shots?
Yes.
Given the number of wounds on Mr. Vallow, did that appear consistent with that theory?
Very much so.
So 2 entrances, 2 exits?
Yes.
When you saw the projectile that you recovered, that we see in Exhibit 20 on the side over here, that entered into that baseboard, given the injuries to Mr. Vallow and the projectiles and the location of this, were you able to determine any consistencies of where the shooter may have been when that occurred?
Approximate location, yes.
And how did you do that?
Based on the wounds to Mr. Vallow, the location of where the projectile had ended up, and where the casings were, the working theory at that point was that the firearm ejected the casings to the right, striking the wall where that has the curve there, and bounced back towards the west wall. The projectile would have continued on a relatively straight path and embedded itself in the baseboard at the other end of the room.
So would that have put the shooter somewhere in this area?
Yes.
And so that to you seemed consistent with one of the shots having gone through him and ended up what we see in Exhibit 20 over here in the baseboard, Mr. Vallow being somewhere over in this area.
Correct.
Okay. Given the information that you obtained, let me ask you this. Given the information that you saw at the scene there, again, with the casings, the injuries to Mr. Vallow, both to the abdomen and the shoulder, and then after you cleaned up the blood, the damage to the floor underneath the location of his left shoulder, were you able at that point to start, have any concept or have an idea of what would be consistent with where the shooter may have been and where Mr. Vallow may have been for that shot?
Yes.
What did you base that on?
Again, a lot of the factors that have been discussed, the location of the projectile, item number 4, the defect in the floor that was underneath him, the location of the second casing. It was all consistent with the shooter having been at the feet, not necessarily right upon the feet of Mr. Vallow, but in that direction, close enough so that the projectile could again bounce off that wall and land on the west wall,
The projectile or
or
casing?
the casing, sorry.
When you were looking at this scene, I'm going to put 56 up. Obviously, there's no exact, I'm going to move Mr. Vallow this way just to kind of be looking the same direction. Did this defect appear to be in the area of Mr. Vallow's shoulder?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Vallow had been rolled a couple times by the time you cleaned that scene up.
Yes.
So you didn't like stick a rod through him there and see if that worked?
No, that would be inappropriate.
Are you even allowed to do that?
No.
Does a medical examiner frown on that?
Yes, that's, the body is theirs by law.
So you're basically able to look at where he was located and say that that is consistent with being underneath his left shoulder.
Yes, and we did take measurements of the body before it was moved.
All right. So when you measured where the body was and then you cleaned up that blood and measured where that projectile divot was that consistent with where his left shoulder was?
Yes.
Given that information that you had at that time, were you able to draw any conclusions as to whether or not the evidence was consistent with Charles Vallow being laying on the ground when he was shot?
Very much so in the position that you see him. He was, the second shot that entered the abdomen would have been where he was lying.
Did you attend the autopsy itself?
I did.
And when you were at the, can you tell us what it means when you attend an autopsy as a detective?
So as a detective, we go to the medical examiner on the date that they're going to do the autopsy. There is the autopsy suite itself where the doctors and technicians work with the bodies. Observers will be outside of that suite, but able to communicate with the staff. There's a window where we can see everything that's going on. And like I said, we can communicate either by a phone that's on the wall or they'll come around and talk with us. We have the ability to observe everything that transpires. There's even a camera overhead that we can manipulate to get a different view. Say the feet are towards us, we can get the camera to look at when they're working on the head or something like that.
When you were at the medical examiner's office as they were performing the autopsy, did you learn additional evidence that helped support your opinion as to whether or not Mr. Vallow was laying on the ground when he was shot in the abdomen and the bullet exited his left shoulder?
Yes.
What was that additional evidence that you considered when reaching this opinion?
Well, I had asked for specific things for the doctor to include in the examination that would help me with rendering that information. One of them was to measure the location of the bullet strikes on the body, both the entry and the exits. And then I also asked for the use of trajectory rods, if it was available, to help demonstrate the angles of the shots so that I could visibly see everything. They have the unique experience of being able to see the actual damage to the organs as it's passing through. It's not all super clear for me for that part, so the trajectory rods help out a lot.
Having observed the location of the injuries, that measurement, the trajectory rods, did that further support or go against your opinion that Charles Vallow was laying on the ground when he was shot in the abdomen?
It further supported it.
in your opinion then, can you list all the factors that you rely upon to determine that, or to reach your opinion that Charles Vallow was laying on the floor when he was shot in the abdomen and the shot exited his left shoulder?
The consistencies of a lot of the evidence that I had personally seen. The trajectory rods helped establish that alone, where it shows the entry into the lower left abdomen and then the exit out through the left shoulder blade area. The divot in the floor that was located underneath the body, the projectile that had expended the rest of its energy coming from underneath the body and coming to rest close to the body. There was a lack of stippling that was visible, meaning unburned powder or gunshot residue actually on the skin or clothing that we could identify. So that gave us the fact that the shooter was a bit of a ways away from the body, but the body was firmly on the floor at the time of the shot. There's just no way for the impact on the floor and the exit of the body to articulate anything else with that angle.
After you, let me ask you this. Do you recall how long you were at the scene that day?
I got there about 9 or a little after, and I think we left sometime between 1600 and 1630,
What's that in normal people time?
4 to 4:30 in the afternoon.
Did that sort of end your involvement in processing this whole scene?
The Four Peaks scene, yes.
Your Honor, the state has no other questions for this witness.
All right, cross-examination.
Your Honor, can I have a few minutes to defer with my advisory council? before
Briefly. Yep, briefly. All right, I need to excuse the jury for just a couple minutes to resolve something. It should only take a few minutes. We'll have you wait in the jury room, and then we'll continue. All right, the jury is no longer present. Go ahead and take a short break.
Detective Coons, you were the scene agent that day on scene, is that correct?
Primarily, yes.
And did you work for someone else before Chandler Police Department?
United States Army, Arizona Department of Corrections, a couple other little jobs after I got out of the Army.
Did you work for Gilbert Police Department at all?
No,
And as the scene agent that day, you talked about, you were there. Did you write a report about that day?
yes, ma'am.
When did you write that report?
I don't know the day I sat down to write it. It was shortly after the event,
So close to July 11th, 2019?
close to it.
Within a week, maybe?
Again, I don't recall when I specifically started typing that.
And when you arrived that day, who was there already?
Patrol officers,
Just them?
the fire department might have been there. Alex Cox was there. Other detectives arrived. I couldn't tell you the order of which everybody arrived.
And where did you park?
I parked north of the scene.
And then did you go directly into the house?
No, ma'am.
What did you do first?
We received a briefing of what patrol officers had learned. We learned that there was a body inside the residence, and we came up with an investigative plan.
Who did that debriefing to you?
I don't think anybody specifically ran the debriefing. We, as detectives, gathered around the patrol officers, and they informed us basically of what they had seen and what they had been told.
And who were those detectives with you?
Well, Detective Duncan would have been there with me. Detective Moffett would have been there. I didn't take a roll call of all the detectives there. Possibly Detective Inclin. I don't know.
Okay. And then where did you proceed after that debriefing?
Well, after the debriefing, I provided the information of what I had learned to Detective Kaminsky, who is still back at the police department, and gave him the information necessary to request a search warrant for the residence.
And then what?
We waited.
To get the search warrant?
Yes, ma'am.
To have it issued?
To see if the judge would issue it, yes.
And how long did that take?
Don't believe we got word back from the courts until it would have been probably between 11:30, 11:45, and then we made entry shortly thereafter.
So is it your protocol that you can't enter until the search warrant is issued?
That is what we do once the scene has been made secure, yes.
Okay. And then when you entered, who entered with you?
Myself, the crime scene tech, we were the initial ones. I think Detective Duncan might have come in with us as well, but that would have been the extent of the initial entry.
Do you know the name of the crime scene tech that was with you?
Jordan,
Is that the last name or first name?
the last name.
And then what did you do after that?
Well, after that, we continued to go with our normal process of having photographs taken. I did the lizard Q spheres. I completed getting information necessary for the diagram that was presented, and continued to just do our job.
So is that protocol to do photographs first?
That would be our protocol, yes.
And then what do you do after that? I know that you were searching for the blood in all the rooms. When did that occur?
That occurs after the initial photographs are done, and then we can walk through and look in the particular areas that's been photographed already.
Okay, so the photographs are finished and then you guys kind of walk through.
Or at least finished in an area that we can actually walk through, yes.
Okay. And then when did you set up the tripod after, how long after that?
So the tripod was set up after the area had been photographed. So that way I wasn't interfering with anything. And that way we're not having the tripod in our original photographs.
Right, makes sense. And do you think, so Detective Duncan was with you going through the house?
I believe he was there, yes.
So it was basically the two of you or three of you going through room by room, or were you split up, or how does that work?
We would have divided and conquered a little bit to make the search a little bit more expedient. But that, again, you're slowed to the time frame of what it takes to do the overall photographs.
So the photographs took about how long?
I don't ever look at my watch to see how long it takes because it's a big house, as you're aware. And I let the crime scene tech do their job. I don't push them and tell them that TikTok, there's nothing like that. It's do your job, we'll follow along.
Okay, and you guys started that process at about 11:45?
I think the actual time would have been closer to noon that we would have started that process.
And about how long did it take to go through the whole house, and about how long was that process?
Again, for me, I don't document how long it takes for any particular task because each scene is different. I just focus on doing the tasks. I rarely take a look at my watch to see how much time I'm spending on it because I want to do the job. I don't care about the time it takes.
And you did not pick up any of the evidence that was marked. That wasn't part of your protocol, is to take the evidence into custody. Is that correct?
Most of the evidence I did not pick up, correct.
And whose job is that?
We usually defer to the crime scene techs to do that. There are times that we will assist them with doing it depending on what the item is.
So that day, was it Jordan who did that? Was he the crime scene tech that took that evidence?
She would have been the one that was collecting at our direction, yes.
And so you kind of pointed out as the detectives, and then they pick it up and...
Correct, because they're trained how to handle evidence, how to package evidence, how to process. So we work in tandem together. We're the investigative body and they're the scientific portion of it.
Makes sense. Okay, what time do you think that well, let's ask this. After you're done with the photos, and then you're done with checking the house, and all of the evidence is picked up and logged, then what else do you do at the house? What else did you do at the house that day?
Well, you just bundled that up into like tiny little package, but it took a long time to get to the point that you're talking about. So my day pretty much involved the scene. As far as ancillary jobs to go somewhere else or do other things, no, my day was pretty much spent there on Four Peaks.
Correct. Yeah. So when did you leave the residence then?
We secured from the house sometime between 4 and 4:30 p.m.
And what other tasks did I miss that you accomplished during that 12 o'clock to the 4:30 time?
Oh.
I just don't know what you were doing in there. I'm just wondering.
Well, we identify the proper or the evidence items. We're looking for other evidence items. I am still doing the diagram, so measurements need to be done. We have to wait for the medical examiner to arrive because we can't do anything with the body until they show up. And then once they show up, we pretty much stop with the other projects until we can focus on the body and get the body out of there, because there aren't very many investigators for the medical examiner in the county. So we don't want to tie them up longer than we have to. And then we'll resume searching or identifying information, evidence, collecting it, and working our way to a conclusion where we can leave the scene.
Okay. So after searching the whole entire house, did you guys search the backyard at all?
It was searched.
Did you do that or did someone else do
I
that?
did not.
Who would have been in the backyard searching?
It would have either been another detective or we would have asked an officer to do it.
And what would they be looking for?
Any blood evidence, anything to indicate, based upon the information we had of the event that took place inside that house.
So when you made your assessment, you were able to leave after that assessment was made, that everything was accomplished?
Oh, what assessment are you talking about?
That all the evidence was gathered and collected?
That I was satisfied that we had collected what we needed to collect?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
We could just have Ms. Vallow move her reports away from the camera it's showing.
Oh, is it showing?
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's, actually, let's just turn that off until we need it. Thank you.
So you stated earlier that the weapon, the type of weapon that was found was a .45 caliber?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that a semi-automatic?
It is.
Okay. How is that different from like a revolver? What's the difference between that?
The build itself, I like to use simplistic terms when I describe what a revolver looks like. Most people are familiar with a Western movie. So the wheel gun, that's a revolver. What you see modern police officers carrying these days are semi-autos. So that's kind of the analogy I give to people that don't know guns.
And what's the difference between when you're shooting a semi-automatic or shooting a revolver, how fast you can shoot? Does that make sense?
The speed on which somebody can shoot is dependent upon the shooter themselves. The skill level they have, the weapon they might be using. There are a lot of circumstances and things that happen to be able to qualify that statement.
Right. And you have taken many gun classes, right, that we heard of?
And I'm an instructor, yes.
And you're an instructor. So when you're taking a gun class, is it common for them to say, is it common that they tell you to shoot center mass? Is that a common term?
That is what we train as police officers, is to shoot center mass. It has the highest probability of guaranteeing a hit on the adversary that you're trying to shoot.
Right. So if you were being attacked, you should point at center mass. Is that correct?
That is what's trained, and because stress can obviously create issues, but yes.
Is it a common term to say to center mass?
No,
In training?
that is something that I've heard, but I wouldn't classify it as common.
Would you teach that in your class?
It depends on what class is and what we're actually doing. If it's standard officers, no, I don't tell them to always shoot to center mass, no.
If it was a novice who was like taking a gun class for the first time, would you teach them that?
No.
What would you teach them?
You would teach them to shoot till the threat went away. And that can be with one shot. It can be with more than one shot.
Okay, that's fair. So in this particular gun, the 45, when the shells are ejected, where do they go?
Out and away.
So in this particular gun, do they go to the right or to the left?
I have not test fired this particular gun. I believe that most semi-automatics do eject the casings out to the right. Whether it's high right, low right, I'm not sure. It could be farther forward, it could be farther back. I did not test fire this gun, so I cannot speak specifically to how this particular gun ejects, other than most likely to the right.
But it could go to the left?
No, not the way the ejection port is set up.
So no guns that are 45s could go to the left?
Certainly, you could have a left-handed gun set up that it would eject that way. But the way this particular gun is set up, the ejection port dictates which way that's going to go. When the slide cycles back and that extractor pulls the casing back, the ejector is usually located on the opposite side of the extractor, and that will kick it out of the actual ejection port of the slide.
So for someone like me who doesn't really understand guns too well, you would say that a right-handed gun, they would eject out of the right, but a left-handed gun, they could eject out of the left.
And they're very rare to see.
And do people have left-handed guns? I guess I never really thought about that.
Some people do.
If you're left-handed, you'd want that, I guess. Okay. So in this particular case, when you said in your report that the shells bounced off the wall, they had gone to the right, like they were supposed to. Is that correct?
That is what I was operating off of, yes.
And then they would have bounced to the left,
Yes, because that makes sense.
and they would have landed to the left of my husband. Is that where they were found?
Along the west wall.
Okay. But how close to the wall were they found?
The pictures show where they were found. They're relatively close to the wall, inches away.
I was gonna say inches,
Yes,
not feet, but inches.
correct.
And so would that be a normal trajectory from hitting the wall to where they landed?
I am not surprised by seeing that, yes.
According to how fast they would be going, how fast does a casing come out of a gun? I don't really know.
I've never chronographed a casing coming out of a gun. I've only chronographed bullets. So I have no idea how fast a casing comes out. It doesn't come out with enough force to really hurt anybody.
So there weren't any divots in the wall or anything like that because,
There could be microscopic divots, but it'd be very difficult to find.
and you didn't find any that were visible to the eye?
Nothing that's caught my eye, no.
So were you there at the time when Alex did the walkthrough?
Yes, ma'am.
And so you were there. Did he describe where he was standing?
Object to hearsay.
Sustained.
Did he show you physically where he was standing?
Object to hearsay.
Sustained.
Was there a wall right next to where he was standing?
Object to hearsay.
Sustained.
Your Honor, I'm not asking for the truth of the matter asserted. I'm saying he observed this person standing in that place.
Well, you can ask him if he observed Mr. Cox standing in that place.
Okay, did you observe Mr. Cox standing in the room where he told you that the gun was?
I observed him standing in the vicinity that he indicated.
And was that in the hallway or in the main room?
No, I'm going to object to hearsay. It's non-testimonial,
Right.
but it is still hearsay.
If the question is in relation to Mr. Cox showing or recreating or demonstrating, then the objection is sustained.
Where did you observe Mr. Cox standing when he went through the walkthrough to?
Well, that's the testimony that I'm saying is a form of hearsay. So please ask a different question.
I'm trying to understand, Your Honor. So what the witness observed is not relevant?
I didn't say that. Let's do a sidebar.
Okay, I would love that. Detective Coons, where would you place the shooter standing in that room?
I would place the shooter in the area of where the curve of the wall was in the kind of the hallway entry area, somewhere in that general area.
So would you have it, what direction would you place him standing? Facing, I mean, not standing, but facing.
For which shot?
The first one.
The first one in a more northeasterly direction,
Mhm. And the second?
in a more northern direction with a slight deviation to the east.
So would you have him stepping forward? Is that what you're saying?
No,
What direction would you have him moving?
I didn't say the shooter moved.
You're just saying that he shot from a different angle?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you think he was standing in the same location?
I don't know that.
So according to where you put him standing with the first shot, the casing bounced off of the wall to the right and landed to the left.
Correct.
And then where you have him standing in the second shot, the same thing happened.
Approximately, yes.
And how far apart were those casings found?
I don't have the specific measurement of how far apart they were. They were a few feet.
So they're a few feet apart.
Yes.
So if he was standing in the same place, would they be a few feet apart or would they be closer?
It depends on a different amount of things, like how was the gun being held? Was it canted to the side? Was it not? What the angle was? Could the shooter have moved? A little, but it would have been the same general vicinity.
But you said he didn't move, according to you.
I said I didn't say he moved.
So he could have moved because they were more than a foot apart, the casings found.
A little, yes. Would have been in the same general area.
So he could have taken a couple steps.
Perhaps. Could have slid the body sideways. Anything that you can do to the body, it could have been done in a short area.
And is that common in, I don't know with shooting, if is that common with someone to shoot once and then move and shoot again?
Discussion, speculation, relevance,
I'll sustain it on speculation.
In your experience as a firearms expert who fires a lot of guns, right? Would that be a common thing to do?
An objection is to speculation as to when, where, circumstances.
All right, let's sustain the objection as to speculation.
Let's talk about stippling. The first shot, according to you, had stippling. Is that correct?
No,
It did not have any stippling.
none was observed.
And the second shot,
None was observed.
no stippling was observed.
Correct.
Is that what's in the ME's report?
I believe so.
That there was no stippling? Can I have a minute, Your Honor? When you were observing the autopsy, the ME didn't say anything about stippling?
I don't recall any mention about stippling.
And you didn't have a discussion with him about it?
We would have if he'd observed any.
And so if he said that to someone else, you would be surprised?
I don't know what he had in his notes. I didn't author his report.
Can you describe stippling for us? What that is?
Sure. It's basically a combination of particles that come out from behind or follow the projectile as it exits the barrel. A lot of times it's partial burned or unburned powder, and it's a short distance phenomena, so the person has to be extremely close for the pattern to actually present itself and the particles embed in the clothing or the skin.
So if stippling was found, how far away would the gun have to be from the victim
That depends on the gun.
on this 45 semi-automatic?
I am not an expert on the stippling patterns. That is something that we would have to send to the lab for. And what they would do is they would test it with witness panels at different distances to give that information.
Is there an estimate?
That's where it would come in. Usually the medical examiner, if they observe stippling, will give an estimate of close or contact.
So would you be surprised if he said 2 to 4 feet?
If that's what he says.
That if there's stippling, then the gun would have to be 2 to 4 feet.
It's possible, but I wouldn't hold my hat on that, no. I would have to have the gun tested for that.
Okay. And
Is this a good spot to break for the evening?
Sure, Your
I
Honor.
mean, I'm not cutting you off. If you want to ask a few more questions, that's fine.
Nope, that's fine.
All right, we'll take our evening recess. Members of the jury, please remember the admonition. I'll remind you to specifically avoid any outside information, any information about this case outside this courtroom. And we'll see you tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Thank you.
All rise for the jury.